moments of complacency. When caste crumbles to dust, he will live on as one among those who cast the biggest stones against it.
When we remember Rohith, we stand together as son and daughter of Ekalavya, as a descendant of Sambuka, and as the brother and sister of Rohith and Dr. Payal and Dr. Anita.
When we remember Rohith Vemula, we remember the loftiness of the ideas of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, the righteousness and the moral urgency of this battle, and our vow to win it for him. Ours is a battle, as Baba Saheb said, not for wealth, not for power. Ours is a battle for freedom, for reclamation of human personality. In his last letter, Rohith Anna also spoke about the need to reclaim the human personality and not to reduce a person to a number. Now, we have Rushita from Political Science Department to read out his letter.
Good evening, everyone. Rohith Vemula's last letter. Good morning. I will not be around when you read this letter. Don't get angry on me. I know some of you truly cared for me, love me, and treat me very well. I have no complaints on anyone. It was always with myself I had problems. I feel a growing gap between my soul and my body, and I have become a monster. I always wanted to be a writer of science like Carl Sagan. At last, this is the only letter I'm getting to write. I always wanted to be a writer of science like Carl Sagan. I loved sciences, stars, nature, but then I loved people without knowing that people have long since divorced from nature. Our feelings are second-handed, our love is constructed, our beliefs colored, our originality valid through artificial art. It has become truly difficult to love without getting hurt. The value of a man was reduced for the future. For one last time, Jai Bhim. I forgot to write the formalities. No one is responsible for this act of killing myself. No one has instigated me, whether by acts or by their words to this act. This is my decision, and I'm the only one responsible for this. Do not trouble my friends and enemies on this after I am gone. Thank you.
We began the program with Song of Resistance and remembering Rohith Vemula.
Hello, check.
Hello, check.
Adavi Arts Collective to perform Right Pari for Rohith. Adavi Arts Collective is a Bengaluru-based folk arts collective dedicated to revitalizing and promoting traditional art forms, especially the parai, an ancient percussion instrument with deep cultural roots. Using music, performance, storytelling, and community engagement, the collective connects folk art with contemporary audiences and raises issues of equality, resistance, and cultural exchange. They aim to make traditional arts accessible to younger generations and create inclusive spaces in which art can become a means of collective celebration and protest discrimination. We are honored to have Adavi Arts Collective with us today, and we now invite them to take the stage for their performance.
அல்ல, கொண்டாட்டத்துக்கான பறை. சாவுக்கு இசைக்க மாட்டோம், சாராயம் குடித்து பறை இசைக்க மாட்டோம். சாவுக்கு இசைக்க மாட்டோம், ஜாதி சாவு வரை பறை இசைப்போம். பாண்டியன் மீதானே, டாக்டர் அம்பேத்கர் மீதானே, எங்கள் ஆதி பறையின் மீதானே.
சொல்வோம், எவனுக்கும் தலை வணங்க மாட்டோம். பணிந்து போக மாட்டோம், எவனுக்கும் பயந்து வாழ மாட்டோம். தலித்து என்று சொல்வோம், எவனுக்கும் தலை வணங்க மாட்டோம். பயந்து வாழ மாட்டோம், தலித்து என்று சொல்வோம், எவனுக்கும் தலை வணங்க மாட்டோம். அடங்கி வாழ்வது அடிமைத்தனம், அதை அடித்து நொறுக்குவது தலித். அடங்கி வாழ்வது அடிமைத்தனம், அதை அடிக்குவது தலித்து குணம். நாங்கள் மதுரை சொன்னார், இந்தியன் நாங்கள் தமிழன் என்று சொல், நீ இந்து என்று சொன்னார், நாங்கள் என்று சொல்வோம். அடங்கி வாழ்வதனம், அதை அடித்து நொறுக்குவது தலித்து குணம். அடங்கி வாழ்வது அடிமைத்தனம், அதை அடித்து நொறுக்குவது தலித்து குணம்.
Jai Bhim. Thank you. We are Adavi Arts Collective. We are a Dalit anti-caste arts collective. We are based in Bangalore. So I'll just give a very brief introduction about us. So Adavi is like a nest where all the dancers can come and rest and enhance their creativity, share their ideas and such. And all our teammates, they're all not primary parai performers. They're all working in different fields. Some of us are students, some of us are working, some of us are housewives. So I'll just pass the mic along and ask each of them to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Nandan from Bangalore. Hello, myself Nan.
Catch a breath.
Yeah, I am performer in Adavi.
I am Tarap Surya. Hi, I'm Raj Kumar. I'm working as a graphic designer.
Vanakkam Hyderabad. I am Mariappan from Hosur.
My name is Shakti Ingo LKG. I'm Charun, studying in 5th standard.
I am Jaipriya, Tamil literature.
Muttulakshmi Osu.
I'm Sachin, I'm from Bangalore.
I'm Arpagan, parai artist.
I'm Vai, I am a psychology student, and Naren is the founder of Adavi, by the way. Oh, yes.
I am Veera, Adavi artist.
Hello everyone, I am Arudra, I am studying BA History, and I would like to thank the entire crowd who was here and all of you for interacting with us. And as Adavi, we are deeply connected with being anti-castes, and we are primarily trying to revive folk arts, and we would like each one of you to learn folk art and alongside your academics obviously. So do come interact with us. We are in host Bangalore, so do come by. Thank you.
Turn it further a little towards the center. हाँ उसको भी मैंने हाँ हाँ it's bending straighten it ना पीछे हाँ
Jai Bhim everyone. I request the guests to take seat on the dais. Jignesh Mevani, Dr. Visharadan Maharaj, Radhika Amma, Advocate Ragunad, V. Gita, Payal Tadvi, Darshan Solanki, Bhanga Bukia. Please take a seat on the dais. We now invite our guests to take the stage and garland the portraits of Baba Saheb Ambedkar and Rohith Vemula. I now invite our guests to take the stage and garland the portraits of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Rohith Vemula, Padayatra, and Dashan Solanki.
Our first speaker is Professor Bhanga Bukia, an Indian historian, public intellectual, and scholar of modern Indian history, currently serving as a professor of the Department of History at the University of Hyderabad. His research focuses on community histories, particularly of subaltern and indigenous groups such as the Lambadas, Gonds, and other marginalized communities in the Deccan and Central India. His notable books include Subjugated Nomads, The Lambadas Under the Rule of the Nizams, The Roots of the Periphery, A History of the Gonds of Deccan India, History of Modern Telangana, and A Cultural History of Telangana. We welcome Professor Bhanga Bukia to address the gathering.
Jai Bhim to all friends on the dais and of the dais. Many good friends are also here. I mean, so after seeing Adavi's performance, I'm really speechless. In the sense, who said Dalit Bahujans don't have talent? The kind of talent they expressed on the dais here on this occasion, it's really amazing. Yeah, friends,
It has been 10 years. Rohith Vemula left us. And in the last 10 years, of course, there are so many things happened. Why we are remembering today Rohith Vemula, we all know. It's a very important to remember and also celebrate Rohith Vemula's death. Of course, physically he may not be with us, but spiritually he is very much with us. That is how actually today we are celebrating his 10th death anniversary. I come from a tribal Adivasi background, so we don't believe in death of the spirit. Spirit basically passes from one body to another body. So it passes into some tree, some animal, and that's how basically Adivasis worship animals and plants, thinking that our forefathers lived in form of cow, goat, sheep, neem tree, alm tree, something like that. Rohith Vemula must be there in some trees here on the campus. So his spirit is around. I don't think his spirit has gone outside this campus. Friends, his death was so painful, but created a great momentum, great consciousness across the country. Even, institutional murder, caste-based discrimination could go to whole globe. The whole globe came to know, tried to understand what kind of inhuman practices it is. So, in the last 10 years particularly, there are so many things happening around Rohith Vemula's this death. There are so many discussions, seminars on caste-based discrimination in institutions. Of course, apart from fighting the cases booked against our students, those who are involved in the movement. Advocate Ragunad is with us. He has been fighting on behalf of us. I must thank him on behalf of the student community and faculty of this university. Bhimrao ji is also fighting for us in Supreme Court. So, apart from this, there are a lot of things actually happening. Thing is how to understand this institutional discrimination. So basically, caste-based discrimination in a higher education institution is a very, very important thing. Gita Gar is with us, so he has extensively written on this. She would be telling us how to understand this. Sometimes back, I have actually done a study on tribal educational status in Telangana. This project was actually housed at here. Kannaba Kalpana is here from CDS. interviewed one Koya tribal boy. And his experience, the last sentence he told me is, sir, now I wanted to start my education from alphabetic. He was a MCom postgraduate student and said to me that no, he wanted to start his education from alphabetics, from primary school. That means whatever he studied so far did not give him anything, any skill, anything, is not, fit to anything. I mean, so that is what our education institutions are now producing. That is what education is to SC, STs and BCs. So there is somewhere some problem with our education institutions. So every level you see discrimination. And interesting part of this is it is invisible. I mean, so social discrimination outside, you can easily make out the gestures and all that. But in the education institutions, very difficult to make out. When we go to the school, there won't be blackboard. If there is a blackboard, there won't be chalk paste. If there is a chalk paste, there won't be a teacher. These all are now discriminations. Okay. Not creating infrastructure in the schools, in the colleges, in the universities is also discrimination. I mean, so teacher showing discrimination towards a student, that's a different thing. Not releasing fellowships on time is also discrimination. Okay? We come to this university with a lot of hopes, but we, our studies, when we do, our schooling, college, we face so many problems. We have problem with the language, we have problem with the subjects because the curriculum is completely, foreign to us. Despite all that, with great difficulties, we come to the universities. And universities like ours, elite universities, IITs, IIMs, the teacher treat us along with the other students who have come with very good educational backgrounds. How can we cope up with the other students? We don't have any mechanism to cope up or compete with other fellow students who have come from urban or with good academic backgrounds and expect us to compete with these students. Is this not discrimination? This is also discrimination. There should be some foundation course, those who come with a disadvantaged background. Not providing, foundation course is also a discrimination. Not providing facilities in the hostels is also discrimination. No, you should be with a stable mind, good condition, then only you will able to focus on your studies. Of course, our teachers, they don't treat us as their students. There's many gestures, signs. As a teacher, I don't want to say all these things But it's a very unfortunate, these things are now still happening and we are experiencing. And very unfortunate thing is the upper caste takes pride in being casteist, being exploited, being dominate. I haven't seen these kinds of attitude anywhere on the planet. You have this kind of attitude only on the in India. So, I mean, how to understand this discrimination in the educational institution is also very, very important, friends. And what are the mechanisms to deal with this discrimination? Just now, UGC has released 2026 regulations, equal opportunity cell regulations. They're the same system. I mean, sir, I didn't see anything new in this. There are two things. One is they included OBC as well in this equal opportunity guidelines. The other thing is, this is the new addition to this new regulation. That is, if the complainant makes a false complaint, he will be punished. So now this regulation will be used against the victims rather than giving justice. We have been fighting for justice for Rohith Vemula in the last 10 years. Nothing is happening, nothing is moving. Today also we went and meet Telangana Deputy Chief Minister to withdraw the cases booked against our students during the Rohith Vemula movement, and to reopen and speed up the cases booked by us against this institutional murder, to enact Rohith Vemula Act. So we are still basically fighting. But now with this UGC new guidelines, I don't see any great hope. Why? Is because we already have actually the system, the institutional mechanism. Rohith Vemula committed suicide because the institutional system mechanism has failed. Because institutional mechanism has failed, Rohith Vemula had to take a very extreme step. I haven't seen, I joined in university system 97, so almost I think completed 28 years of service in university. I never seen in any case student getting justice. There is a ST cell in the university system. There is a equal opportunity cell. All this there is a proctoral cell. But these systems, don't help the students. Don't deliver any justice to the students. Students making complaints and they complete their course and leave the campus. But nothing is actually going to happen. I have seen in my own department, in many other departments, students do make complaints, but nothing happens. So, means what I'm trying to say is the institutional mechanism has failed. We need a separate mechanism to deal with the institutional discriminations. This caste-based discrimination in the institutions. So, like now, Karnataka government, I think, about to enact this Rohith Vemula Act, and today we pleaded the Telangana government as well. Hope Telangana government also come up with this act very soon. So there should be some outside system to actually deal with this kind of discrimination on the campuses and educational institutions. I mean, so people, I mean, so now, I mean, so there are a lot of things actually happening at the national level. Very difficult to comprehend also things. Every day there will be some new thing floated before us. And we are not actually given time also to comprehend that particular policy or particular thing. And I mean, now I mean, there is a very systematic attempt to kill public institutions as well. So now, I mean, almost, I mean, as I said, not giving funds to public institution is also discrimination. It's very systematically happening. The upper caste of this country killed school education, college education, and now they're killing university education as well. And building parallel private schools, private colleges, and private universities for their children. So they don't bother about this public institutions. And now they are introducing Sanatana Dharma kind of courses and education curriculums, so that all the SC/ST BCs will study the sorcery. I mean, I was just reading in newspaper, some BHU is introducing a course on sorcery, palmistry, okay? So, Gita. So, all these kinds of things. Actually, central government has come up with a policy to introduce Gita from 6th to 10th class. So, this is where they are introducing this in public institutions. Who are the people studying in public institution? SC, ST, BCs and Muslim minorities. So they will study this, and their children will be studying ICSCs or some international syllabuses in corporate schools and corporate colleges, and liberal arts in private universities, Ashoka and all these universities. So they'll be studying very good quality, creative kind of critical studies, and our children, SC/ST, BC, minority children will be studying all these kinds of nonsense. What is that we are getting from these studies? What is that? How it is going to help us to develop a critical thinking? So, I mean, sir, that's what actually very delibereately happening. We are not able to understand in the name of new education policy and revamping UGC, that dismantling UGC as well. So, for whom they are doing this, why they are doing this, we have to actually understand this, and taking Rohith Vemula's spirit, his dream, I think we have to fight against all these kinds of anti-SC, ST, BC, minority policies, education policies. That would be actually the main what I can say, means the Johar, means the main Johar to Rohith Vemula. So I think with this word, I'll conclude my remark. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Once again, Jai Bhim. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Every Rohith Sadha Din, we stand with family scared by caste, violence, and foreground their testimony of grief, resistance, and unfinished struggle. This year, we have with us Ramesh Bhai Solanki. Ramesh Bhai Solanki is the father of Darshan Solanki, an 18-year-old IIT Bombay student who passed away in 2023. Darshan, a bright and promising student from Ahmedabad, faced caste-based discrimination at the institute, which led to his ultimately death. Since then, Ramesh Bhai has been actively raising awareness about caste inequality in educational institutions and seeking justice for his son. We invite Ramesh Bhai Solanki sir to address the gathering.
जय भीम। बाबा साहेब आम्बेडकर ने जो कहा है कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ख़त्म करो, और ये ख़त्म हो नहीं रहा है। हमारे छोटे बच्चे, छोटी कास्ट के बच्चे को ही ये सब सहना पड़ता है। उसके लिए आप लोग जो सब स्टूडेंट जो भी मेहनत कर रहे हो, वो सब मुझे अच्छा लगा। और ज़्यादा तो मुझे कुछ बोल नहीं पाऊँगा कि ऐसे कुछ मैंने प्रोग्राम किए नहीं है। मुझे ये सब देख के अच्छा लगता है, और मैं यही सोचता हूँ और यही कहना चाहता हूँ कि आप ये जो सब प्रोग्राम करते हो बहुत अच्छा करते हो, और ये कास्ट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन ख़त्म हो, ऐसी मेरी सरकार से और आप स्टूडेंट से भी गुजारिश है कि ये सब खत्म होना चाहिए। जय भीम।
Thank you, sir. And next we have Abida Salim Tadvi, the mother of Dr. Payal Tadvi, a young tribal doctor belonging to the Tadvi Bhil community, who was institutionally murdered in May 2019 after facing sustained caste-based harassment and discrimination from senior colleagues while pursuing her postgraduate medical training in Mumbai. Abida ma'am has been a vocal advocate for justice in her daughter's case and has sought accountability and stronger enforcement of anti-discrimination protections in educational and professional institutions. Her fight for justice extends to challenging caste prejudice and supporting systemic change to protect marginalized students and professionals from similar harm. We now invite Abida Salim Tadvi to address the gathering.
नमस्ते। भारत रत्न बाबा साहब आम्बेडकर जी इनको विनम्र अभिवादन करती हूँ। आदरणीय मंच पर उपस्थित मान्यगण तथा राधिका जी तथा सभी स्टूडेंट, आज रोहित वेमुला इनके 10वीं शहादत दिन पर अवसर पर मुझे यहाँ उपस्थित रहने का मौका दिया, मैं सभी को प्रणाम करती हूँ। रोहित वेमुला, डॉक्टर पायल तड़वी और दर्शन सोलंकी इनकी जाति भेद व्यवस्था की वजह से जान ली गई है। ये आप सभी लोग जानते हैं। रोहित वेमुला, डॉक्टर पायल तड़वी और दर्शन सोलंकी, इनकी क्या गलती थी? उनको दलित आदिवासी समाज की वजह से उन्हें आत्महत्या करने पर प्रवृत्त और मजबूर कर दिया। मेरी बेटी डॉक्टर पायल नायर हॉस्पिटल टोपीवाला कॉलेज में पीजी गायनालॉजिस्ट डिपार्टमेंट में सेकंड ईयर में पढ़ रही थी। रेसिडेंटल जो डॉक्टर थे सीनियर्स, पहले दिन में उसे पूछा गया और जाति भेद कम नहीं हुआ है। ये बहुत दुख की बात है। इन्हीं कारणों में एक लड़की ने मुंबई में भी आत्महत्या करने का प्रयास किया। मुंबई ने एक मेडिकल स्टूडेंट ने आत्महत्या कर ली। राजस्थान में एक लड़की मेडिकल स्टूडेंट ने आत्महत्या की। ऐसे बहुत सारे केस होते हैं पर हमें मालूम नहीं होता, तो इसे रोक लगाना चाहिए। इसी बातों से हम पीछे खींचने का हमारे स्टूडेंट को प्रयास किया जा रहा है। पायल का क्या दोष था? क्या आदिवासी समाज की है तो उसे आगे नहीं जाना चाहिए, उसने उच्च शिक्षा नहीं लेना चाहिए। हमें और पायल को बड़ा डॉक्टर बनने का, न तो बड़ा बंगला, गाड़ी या चैन की सभी चीजें लेना ये अपेक्षा नहीं थी, बल्कि बड़ी डॉक्टर होकर समाज के बिछड़े और गरीब पेशेंट की सेवा करना चाहती थी। ये उसके निर्णय से हम भी बहुत संतुष्ट थे। क्या हमें सपने देखने का अधिकार नहीं? इन्हीं सब वजह से आज भी हम बहुत दुखी रहते हैं। अब समाज में किसी भी व्यक्ति पर, अगर स्टूडेंट पर ऐसा हुआ तो हम खुद अपराधी मानते हैं कि हम इसे बचा नहीं सके या उसे मदद नहीं किया। आप मुझे इस लड़ाई में हमेशा मेरा साथ दे। मुझे आपके सामने मेरे मन की बात कहने का अवसर दिया। मैं सभी का शुक्रगुजार अदा करती हूँ। जय हिंद।
Thank you, Amma. I now invite Dayanidhi Anna, President of Ambedkar Student Association, University of Hyderabad, to update us on the status of Rohith Vemula cases.
Jai Bhim everyone. A case was filed with FIR number 20/2016 by Mr. Donta Prashant in the case of discrimination and harassment leading to the institutional murder of Rohith Vemula, with the accused arrayed as Nandanam Sushil, Podile Apparao, Bandaru Dattatreya, N. Ramachandran Rao, Divakar, Smriti Irani along with the officials of MSRD were arrayed as accused in the statement of the complainant. Instead of investigating the case fairly, the police had filed a closure report in the jurisdictional court on 21st March 2024 and the High Court on 2nd May 2024. This led to a huge uproar and protest across universities. Thankfully, on 3rd May 2024, Telangana DGP stated that the case would be reopened. On the following day, 4th May 2024, a delegation comprising of Radhika Vemula, mother of Rohith Vemula, complainant, students, faculty met Honorable Chief Minister and submitted a memorandum to conduct a fair inquiry. The representation was forwarded to the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Madhavpur. ACP had filed a petition in the jurisdictional court and sought an opinion from the public prosecutor. The public prosecutor had opined to carry on with further investigation. In this process, we appeal the government to carry further investigation. Second, more than 50 students and faculty were falsely implicated and about 27 were arrested for being part of seeking justice for Rohith Vemula in the year 2016. We request for dropping the cases on the same. Third case, ASA and its leadership is committed to fight in the false case posted by former ABVP President Sushil. This case is fought since over 10 years. It is at the stage of cross-examination. Advocate Ragunad has been continuously standing with us in this trial. Coinciding with a decade of justice for Rohith Vemula movement, a people's campaign led by Ambedkarites, civil society and anti-caste intellectuals in Karnataka have prepared a draft of Rohith Vemula Act. This is being seriously considered by the Karnataka government. As a part of the campaign team, we have amidst us 3 of the members from launch of People's Draft of Rohith Act. I invite Hulikunte Murthy, Senior Ambedkarite Leader, Dr. Asna Singh, National Law University Faculty of Law, Bhim Rudula, Advocate, Rahul, Ambedkar Student Association, GKBK, Gandhi Krishi Vignan Kendra. I also invite Sunkanna Bhelpula and Donta Prashant to join.
Thank you all. Now we have V. Gita, a noted feminist scholar, writer, translator, and anti-caste intellectual. Her work critically engages with questions of caste, gender, nationalism, and social justice, articulated through Ambedkarite and feminist thought. She has authored and translated several influential texts that challenge Brahmanical patriarchy and dominant historical narratives. Through her writing, teaching, and public engagement, she continues to shape critical debates on equality, dignity, and democratic resistance in contemporary India. We invite Gita ma'am to address the gathering.
Jai Bhim. I had titled my talk, taking a phrase from Rohith's letter, Desperate to Start a Life. I want to go over this letter once again with you. I think he wrote it for all of us and for posterity. And I think it is an indictment of our educational system, the Hindu social order, and an indictment of all of us in some ways. These words are particularly haunting, and you all know them. I feel a growing gap between my soul and body, and I have become a monster. The soul, whether it exists or not, is a word that is an intimation of our humanity, our shared humanity. That ineffable sense of self which enables us grasp the world, all of us, wherever we are, in all its terror, in all its ugliness, but also in all its beauty. Whatever we call the soul, perhaps stands in for that creative energy in all of us. And this is what also enables us, in the middle of terrible circumstances, also to imagine a better, happier, and just world. It represents a yearning to transform ourselves, such as we are, and the world also. And this is what Rohith felt as somebody blessed with a soul, but it is not enough, of course, to be possessed of this desire. The world also must somewhere respect that there is in each of us that yearning to make a better world. And what Rohith experienced was a distance between a life of the mind, the life of the imagination, and his actual existence in this campus as a Dalit student, and the material circumstances that have shaped his life. So there is that gap between soul and body. And as a feminist, and as many women in this room and queer people in this room perhaps know, there is always that disconnect between our embodied existence and what we are capable of. And we all know it so well. We know it through our lives, we know it through the different ways in which our gendered selves are mocked at, disregarded, and so on. And for feminists, it has been a very difficult journey to enter the world of thought, to actually practice a life of the mind. Because women's lives have to unfold in the world of thought in the middle of the mess of everyday life. As a historian Gerda Lerner noted, you had to think in the middle of menses, babies' shit, cooking, kitchen work, 1,000 claims on your time. How do you think in the middle of all of this? So we understand very well that gap between the soul and the body, and what it means to think and what it means to imagine a better world. And queer persons have known this in a very different way as well. Their sense of themselves and how the world chooses to interpret gender and sexuality. And again, that disconnect between mind and body. And Indian philosophy, of course, prides itself on telling us all about the mind and the body and the soul. But as Babasaheb Ambedkar said, much of that discussion unfolds in the realm of abstraction. And it has little or no relationship to everyday life, nor is it interested in examining the consequences of the differences between soul and body for everyday life. And I think this is what Rohith was pointing out to us when he spoke of how he felt that he was a monster because there was nothing around him to help him make sense of this distance. What do you do with this rich creative inner self and a world that will not let you breathe a rich creative person? And for Dalits, this gap has always been fateful, I think. a reminder of the body that must be kept away, a reminder that this body cannot be touched. And as Dr. Ambedkar wrote of what it meant to be a thinking Dalit in the late 1940s on the eve of the transfer of power, and I quote, this is an essay, a short fragment titled Frustration. And I quote from Baba Sahib, "The untouchables are the weariest, most loathed, and the most miserable people that history can witness. They are a spent and sacrificed people. To use the language of Shelley, they are pale for weariness of climbing heaven and gazing on earth, wandering companionless among the stars that have a different birth." So we see how Rohit's references to the stars, Rohit's references to his inner life echo Dr. Ambedkar's sentiments from nearly 75 years ago. So to put it in a simple language, as Ambedkar says, the untouchables have been completely overtaken by a sense of utter frustration. As Matthew Arnold says, and Ambedkar goes on to say, life consists in the effort to affirm one's essence, meaning by this to develop one's own existence fully and freely, to have ample light and hair, to be neither nor, there's a gap there, we don't know what the manuscript says, to be neither held up nor overshadowed. Failure to affirm one's essence is simply another name for frustration. It's non-fulfillment of one's efforts to do the best, the withering of one's faculties, the stunting of one's personality. End of quote. For Rohit, the possibilities that awaited him and other young persons like him to do with learning, to do with love, to do with politics, appeared weighed down by the sheer materiality of existence, of want, of poverty, and also of being untouched and untouchable. I mean, this cruel refusal of touch must have no other civilizational precedent, I think. Not to touch cannot be a virtue in any society, as it has been made out to be in our society. So Rohit's love for science and the stars was an expression of his understanding that whatever Hindu society might say about touch, the universe is interconnected. And this realization that the world is interconnected, the cosmos is interconnected, but one can't touch one's fellow human beings. The sheer monstrosity of that, I think, was something that Rohit felt as a huge tragedy and which weighed him down. And this is something which the Buddhist scholar Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing, that we are all held together in relationships which cannot be separated from what each of us are. So to be an individual is always to be in a relationship. But if you cruelly refuse a relationship to an entire group of people, then what are you actually doing to those individual lives? And so this is something that Baba Sahib put it in a very different way. What for Thich Nhat Hanh was interbeing, to Baba Sahib is the associated life. He calls it the associated life, which is to coexist in fraternity in a spirit of what he calls social fellowship. But Rohit felt that what has been left to us is not this possibility, but a second-hand existence. And he puts it in these very poignant words, that our love appears constructed, our beliefs are colored, and our originality is validated through artificial art. So it's not simply social relationships, but our very minds have been colored by all of this. And this is what Rohit understands about existing in caste society. And to him, this seemed a great alienation, not only between fellow human beings, but human beings and nature. And that's what he says, human beings had become diverse from nature. And as we all know, he also said this had led to man reduced to its immediate identity and nearest possibility, to a vote, to a number, to a thing. So I think what we also perhaps need to reflect on here, this is not only the Hindu social order that has done this, but equally the Hindu secular order that has done this. The ameliorative principles are on the basis of which we think of justice, for example, no? The reservation policy, the way it is understood in this country, it is always seen as some kind of a beneficent thing that the state does for us, that it's a handout by the state. There is something that we are all recipients of. And it is never seen as an entitlement, as a claim on justice, and it is always talked of in terms that are withering and contemptuous. And it is only accepted because it is tied to electoral politics, not because of its normative value or anything else. And that's what I think Rohit means when he says you're reduced to a number, you're reduced to a vote. That is what caste means to you in this country. And that has become even more vicious over the last 10 years. with the relentless hunting for caste vote banks, which the current ruling dispensation has made a virtue of in different ways. Not treating the caste question as something that has to be annihilated, but continuously rebuilt, this time through vote banks. And that is something that Rohith was very sort of concerned about, and that's what he means when he says all of this. And I think what is important here is to distinguish this sort of a very limited ameliorative politics from what Baba Saheb imagined as social justice. What did he want when he spoke for Dalit representation? Why did he think it was important? Whether it was in education, whether it was in politics, what did he mean by wanting a communal award granted to Dalits? The separate electorate question. And I think for Ambedkar, Dalit presence in education, in the services, in economic life, in politics, did not only have to do with the identity that had been imposed on them. It had to do as well and more with what was being destroyed in the name of that identity. The stigma that was being pinned on to the Dalit self also destroyed many things. And Ambedkar was very concerned about what was being destroyed, the individual human person, whose self, as he put it in his affidavit to the Southborough Commission, his self had been confiscated. He uses the word confiscated. Lawyers will understand the meaning of confiscation. Ambedkar uses it in that sense as a lawyer as well. The untouchable has a greatest claim on representation, he says, because his interests are greater than the interests of property. Is greater than the interests of merchants, because he has his very self confiscated. That's the phrase that he uses. So small wonder that he countered that whole notion of confiscation with the idea of self-determination. Now we all know the term self-determination from the history of nationalism, anti-colonial resistance, the right of nations to self-determination. But Ambedkar uses is also to speak of how selves that have been confiscated have the right to determine their selfhood. And only they can determine their selfhood and not others. So he was making a case for Dalit self-representation rather than representation through nomination. But later on in life, he would go on to expand that meaning of self-determination as also something that had to be linked with the potential that each of us has as individuals and which is being completely thwarted by the Hindu social order, by the caste system. And that was very important for him as well. So to realize this potential that is there in each one of us and to make it present in a way that would be available to each one of us. How does one do that? And I think Ambedkar here would have relished Rohith's description of the human persona, a glorious thing made up of stardust. Because inasmuch as he was interested in social justice, he also linked social justice to the flourishing of the individual too. And I think today, when we were garlanding Rohith's statue just to watch Radhika Amma and Abhida Amma, you realize the pain of losing that individual life. And here, Solanki Bai also. And that pain, what is that pain? It's the loss of a rich potential life. We just heard of Payal Tadvi's own journey from her mother. And the pain of these mothers and these parents is not just the loss of a child, it's the loss of a creative being. It's the loss of a child that would have enriched so many other lives, just as it would have enriched their parents' lives. And I think that sense of one ought not to lose sight of that individual in creating structures of justice, because there's a way in which the Hindu social order can basically neutralize any structure of justice. And I think that is where we need to actually call attention again to the suffering individual also. And that's what Rohith's letter has done for us, and we need to keep that in mind. And I think, which is why Rohith ends that letter by invoking this whole cosmic web, you know. He says, maybe I was all wrong in understanding the world, in understanding love, pain, life, death. And then he goes on to say, my birth is my fatal accident. Now, this for me is such a source of grief and sorrow, because the unseemly debates in Parliament, Smriti Irani's characterization of Rohith's identity, for example, and the way in which Rohith was denied his maternity, the way he was again and again proclaimed not to be a Dalit, which is great violence to Radhika Amma's relationship to Rohith. So the manner in which this society and state can be cruel beyond belief in some ways, you know, the denial of a child's relationship to its mother, which is like completely unknown of in almost any culture. So this is something also I think which we need to keep in focus when we think of better systems of justice, better laws and so on. And because as we all know from Ambedkar, caste is both a social system, an economic system and a notion. It is an attitude, it is consciousness, it is there in our heads. And when Bhanga Bukia spoke, he pointed to how it shapes everyday encounters, even major policy decisions. So I think that sense of, what this caste consciousness can do is also something that we need to keep in mind. And I just want to point to 3 things before I end my talk. One is, again, going back to Rohith's letter, are our universities today in a position to do this beyond formal conventions, beyond laws? What about the inner life of universities? There's been a lot of debate about what has happened in JNU, in FTII, in various central institutions. Many of them have to do with this timing of freedom, with the impossibility of taking forward certain ideas, of talking, of discussing. But what about the compromise with equality? As progressives, we are very excited by liberty, but we are not as excited by equality. It's only the anti-caste movement that keeps foregrounding equality. So in that sense, I think we need to really rethink what does it mean to practice equality in an everyday sense in our universities. How do you do that? Apart from holding out the law book and, preaching the constitution to people, because they can also be formalized in complicated ways in India. So I think 3 things. One is what Rohith experienced was a sense of not belonging, of not being understood, of not being valued, of not being taken seriously. How can a student feel that this university space is hers, is theirs? How does that happen? Does it happen through a more inclusive syllabi? Does it happen through conventions which we put in place and we punish people who practice discrimination? I think all of these are important. But equally important also, I think, is to realize that the sense of belonging can only come when there is a reflection of the student's own life world in the university. And many of the students from Bahujan, Dalit, Adivasi and minority backgrounds come from working classes, come from cultures that are only reviled, that are never respected, that are not granted dignity, though they are full of beauty and order and everything, as we saw in the dance performance. And you saw that little child dancing, and you see how those traditions teach effortlessly. That pedagogy was so effortless. The child just watched others dance and she danced. And there is something of pedagogy in these traditions, in our artisanal traditions, in our working class traditions. And I think how does one create that sense of belonging for students who come from these life worlds and who are then served up a curriculum which tells them that they have to move only towards that. Now there is value in moving towards aspects of that curriculum, whether it is science, whether it's law, whether it's the social sciences, but that need not be done at the cost of leaving behind everything that you know. So how does one bridge those worlds, and how can those worlds be made to come alive in the university? And I think those are very, very important questions, and I think we need to pay greater attention to what I call enculturing that unfolds in oppressed communities. How do practices of culture work in those communities? We have all done this spontaneously. I remember, I think it was HCU, or I don't know whether it was FLU, which had that beef festival in the city. Osmania. So that is something spontaneous. That's not institutional. That is groups and individuals and movements that did that beef festival. And there are other such things. Like you have this wonderful music festival every December in Chennai, thanks to Pa Ranjit's Neelam. This massive anti-caste music festival that you have every year now. So these are all efforts through movements, through what we are doing. But where is that energy in the university? Why is not the university taking those things seriously as sources of pedagogy, as sources of value? And I think those things are also important for us to keep in mind, because I think Dalit, Adivasi, Bahujan and minority life worlds and practices have far outstripped the university in many ways. And while some of us see that and carry on work that is meaningful, we do so as individuals. We do so as people from within these communities, or people who would like to fellow travel with these communities. There is nothing in our institutional structure except what an individual teacher might actually do. That is not to be devalued. But often the individual teacher also feels beleaguered because he or she or they have to do these things, when around them the culture is very different. And I think this is important because this is not so only the central universities, but our state universities are an entirely another story, where caste is fairly evident. In Tamil Nadu, it is so ocular by the kind of things you tie on your wrists. I was a resource person over a series of workshops for teachers in government colleges, and many of these teachers came with those threats to the workshop, announcing their caste identity. And caste is openly discussed in the faculty rooms of state universities, and I'm sure Andhra Telangana are no different. Where in fact, young Dalit teachers who have been taken in as new faculty, they immediately are asked on which quota were you admitted, whether it is SC or SCM or SCA, so that they can place you even within the Dalit caste order. So this is a reality in our institutes of higher education. So how do we bring a sense of this other world into this university? Because that other world is out there and doing things. So you can't leave that world behind and continue to be a university as we think we can. And secondly, Rohit's longing to be with the stars, that final thing that he says, to fly to the stars. That's also a longing for knowledge with which every student comes to a university, to discover something, to learn something, to expand their worlds, to be challenged, to meet new people, new experiences, and so on. And the question here is, this knowledge obviously would require an everyday engagement with anti-caste knowledge cultures. And we have a very substantial anti-caste knowledge culture in this country. And there's been a lot of research and writing over the last 20 to 25 years, not only from the usual spaces of Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, but literally across the rest of India. There's been a lot of rich work on the anti-caste traditions of northern India, eastern India, the so-called states which claim that caste had disappeared, Kerala, West Bengal, central India. So there's been a lot of work. Even in states where a caste has been completely sort of held to ransom by communalism, like Gujarat, there have been very active Dalit writers. There's Jignesh here. The Ona movement was very important in the recent history. So there's been all of this stuff. But what stops us from rendering, just as we say we need to have an orientation program when we have a POSH committee, what is to stop us from demanding that every faculty in every university, in every college undergoes a compulsory course in anti-caste thought? Why can't we demand this? Because we have enough scholarship, we have enough resource people. We are not saying that this is right or this is wrong, but there is this body of knowledge. It has to be taken seriously as telling us something that we have not been told so far in a systematic sense. So this should become compulsory reading for faculty, not just for students. Students will learn on their own. They will learn through movements. They will learn through reading. But faculty typically in a state college, once they reached that status of professors, stop reading. This is the truth. And they certainly don't want to engage with anti-caste cultures. And I think this is something also, since we're all engaged with looking at the Rohith Act, or where these new equity committees that the UGC has announced, I think perhaps there are ways in which we can sort of rethink some of these things so that anti-caste ideas do not only depend on the individual teacher's goodwill and so on, but somewhere is part of the thought world of the university. Whether it is watered down, whether it's not taken seriously, at least it is there. It can't be wished away. It can't be an elective, It has to be a compulsory course. This is something I think we can insist on, and we must insist on. If there is an insistence on learning Manusmriti and Bhagavad Gita, then we should insist on everybody reading Phule, Ambedkar, Buddha and everybody else. And not just say we won't read the Manusmriti. Okay, you teach your Manusmriti, we'll give you Ambedkar's version of the Manusmriti. That's one way of countering it. Okay, you read the Bhagavad Gita, we can give you Krishna and his Gita to read as well. We can give you Dharmananda Kosambi's critique of the Bhagavad Gita, which Ambedkar draws upon. So I think these are some ways in which we need to think about what can we do to make the university spaces more accountable, not just in terms of formal justice systems alone, but also the inner life of the university. And I think that is very, very, very important. And so I sort of will end with one little anecdote. I think one of the ways in which we need to do this is also speak in the way Rohith wrote, Because finally, what are our movements about? They are about love, they are about fellowship, they are about justice and equality. And we don't have to use abstruse theoretical phrases to talk about these things. They are the basis of the new social worlds we all want to build. We don't want this Hindu social order, but we want something that can be sustained by the rich traditions of Adivasi culture, by the practice of Dalit equality, by what feminism has brought into our lives, that divide between the outer and the inner worlds, by what queer politics has taught us about gender and sexuality. And the words that cluster around these movements need not only be words of protest and struggle, they can equally be about words of building. There's this great African-American sociologist called George Lipsitz, who's known for his work on black urbanism. So I was once in a conference where he spoke about the city of New Orleans after it was destroyed by that Hurricane Katrina. And then it was rebuilt. And he said he's going to talk about how that city was rebuilt, and I thought he was going to talk about urban, whatever, culture and so on. But he just came and stood there and said, I'm going to talk about love. It was such a powerful beginning. And then he went on to say how Vietnam War veterans and African-American mothers worked together to rebuild certain neighborhoods. And what was that alliance? How did it come about to be? What held them together was simply a love for a city that had nurtured them and a love for the children that have to inherit that city. So he said, that's why I've started my lecture by saying I've come to talk about love. And I think Rohith wants us to talk about love. Rohith doesn't want even a single student to feel abandoned, does not want that student to feel empty. It takes a great deal to empty a rich mind like this. If we are capable of such cruelty, we must trump it with a capability of greater love. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Donta Prashant is a former president of Ambedkar Student Association and former president of UOH Student Union. As we all know, Prashant is one of the 5 Dalit scholars who was socially boycotted by the university administration in December 2015 because he stood up for self-respect despite all the obstruction of the Upper Rao administration and leading the Justice for Radhika Vemula movement. Since 2016, he completed his doctorate and is now teaching as an assistant professor of economics in Azim Premji University. We are honored to have Prashant Anna with us.
Jai Bhim everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for organizing this decade of institutional murder of Rohith Vemula to bring everyone together. I think the past 10 to 15 days, you have reached out to each individual through the kind of programs that you have done. This is a memory of a decade of loss. I don't think many of you must have been in your schools. You might not even have heard about what has happened to Rohith, what led Rohith towards this institutional murder. Yet all of you have joined in this spirit of communion in terms of remembering Rohith. I salute and thank each and everyone who is gathered here. And I'm going to be the most anti-Ambedkarite today because Ambedkar believes in preparation well, reading well, and speaking with a clarity of thought. I'm not going to do that in any sense because I'm going to mostly speak on the basis of experiences of how this movement has arrived, a decade of institutional murder, and see some of the outcomes that have come through. Dickens, yesterday we were having a conversation. He was telling, why shouldn't we tell the stories of ourselves, because no one is going to tell those stories. Of course, that's a longer project. But kind of, I mean, just to kind of touch upon Thirumal, who's here. Thirumal very aptly, when he describes these Brahmanical spaces, he says affirmative action allows to inhibit formal spaces. All of us, through these affirmative action policies, we come into these spaces yet, but not culturally cultivated space. We don't have those cultural cultivation that happens. And how this cultural cultivation happens is the story of Ambedkar Student Association, which began in the year 1993. That cultural association is what is indicative of the Parai performance that taken, which has disturbed auditory senses of few who might have probably kept their headphones and then just walked away right from there. Yet, that particular form of disruption of auditory senses, it's also enabling this space as a space of communion where the culture, which is not to be treated as margins, but the culture which is on par with diverse cultures can be brought and played on the day when Rohith was institutionally murdered, yet as a mark of remembrance. Because mark of remembrance is also to remember what Rohith has believed in. It's not just to mark the institutional murder, but what he believed in. What was Rohith? What was he doing? How was he engaging in terms of communions? Rohith was an exceptional person. When he used to play cricket, I used to treat him as my adversary, because when I bowled, he hit a 6. How can I bear that? And that's the moment when we have lost the match to him. I never had any direct encounter with Rohith till that point of time, but he was a cricketer. In Sukun, he will come in his lungi and then just roam around and engage with everyone, disrupting that imagination of popular senses, right? How you should dress. It's not something that he wanted. He had proposed what alternative thing can be in his own imagination. Rohith was someone who had broken when sciences are supposed to cultivate science, right? But sciences unfortunately have never been scientific in their nature, in the sense of those who get trained in sciences. The way in which they the way in which they perform caste, the way in which they practice caste, it's the most unscientific thing, right? If Payal Tadvi's mother, Abedar Tadvi, could say, I can sustain cancer, but not caste. How powerful that is, that cancer which eats oneself, caste is much beyond than that, right? So Rohith has broken that in life sciences. When he participates in student elections, he brings the crowd of students. When he was in SFI or in ASA, he was the single opposition to anyone who was there in life sciences. And that's how Rohith was, right? Rohith was someone who would accept criticism. When we were having discussions on alliances, for example, Rohith is not someone who shies away. Despite someone having attacked him, he doesn't agree to this fact that no, we should not go and have dialogue with them. He is someone who puts forth this proposal for the purpose of unity oppressed. You must unite. He's someone who is that self-reflective. One must read Sudipto Mandal to imagine how Rohith had his life from that childhood of haunting past, yet surviving through all these gazes, having friendships through Riyaz and many more at University of Hyderabad, and how he reached here. And one should also read his note through this entire life sketch that he had. There is both alienation and communion. Both of them were together. Now, however, the alienation had its greatest halt on the mind that was otherwise thinking, the mind that wanted to become a writer of science, the mind that had that wanted to walk in the footsteps of Carl Sagan, just as Ambedkar had embodied himself with this rational, critical, scientific inquiry in his analysis. Rohith was that kind of a person, right? When we remember Rohith, we also remember the life that he lived. It is not just the life that we imagine through whatever that has happened through the institutional murder. Yes, we also remember what has happened to Rohith and to all of us. Who were we when we imagine ourselves? We all were coming from those tiny little villages from across the country, right? In our case, Telangana and Andhra. And what were we doing? I was playing cricket. I was busy in playing cricket. I didn't want to come and join with the organization. I was open to have a dialogue on reservation as pro-reservation, not pro-reservation, as anti-reservation, because I want to kind of be in the good books of my friends and companions. I was not willing to join ASA, because I mean, the moment if I join ASA, I'll be known. It was that sort of a person. But my imagination could only be changed with building up of a collective space that had happened in this University of Hyderabad. Whenever there were attempts to build this collective space through assertions, their caste has always operated in a counter mechanism. If 2002 episode of rustication was one instance, 2015 social boycott was another counter revolutionary tactic that was performed by the casteist university spaces, which were operated through Brahminical forces, right? Now, there, we all were trying to build a space where we can come together, we can talk together, where we can assertively establish. I don't think I would have learned more in my classroom than I would have learned sitting in auditoriums where Ambedkar Students Association invites speakers. I don't think I would have learned enough of writing, but for my engagement in writing of posters where my poster writing is appreciated, I learned the art of drafting representations. I've learned my writing through the shared experience that was built by this space. I think that's where whoever was standing up for these spaces were also singled out and were attacked, right? And these attacks have become more rampant post 2015. Yet we survive. I think that survival also is extremely important, right? And we survive when we remember Rohith. Rohith's ideals survive through all of us, what he dreamt of not treating a man to his immediate identity, right? To imagine a boundaryless imagination of human beings and not to ensure that any kind of alienation happens. That's where this collective communion has a greater responsibility in that sense. Now, when we were in the consultations on the draft of Rohith Act, to just give a short story of how this space has cultivated some of the best minds. Roy Anto, he was part of anthropology, if I'm not wrong. Roy Anto comes from Tamil Nadu. He never spoke up in any of the gatherings. He used to sing very well, but he wasn't someone who appears to be shy in nature. The moment he passed out of the university, he started a collective called Ambedkar Reading Circle. This Ambedkar Reading Circle would organize sessions in Cubbon Park. Thereby, I mean, Cubbon Park otherwise, which was an elitist space, just the existence of Ambedkar Reading Circle makes that, oh, here some of our events have happened, right? That makes that space itself as belong, the sense of belonging, right? As we see a sense of belonging whenever our cultural forms are performed, right? So, thus, they were organizing that. And when we had Rohith Chadat, then when we were remembering Rohith, when we were proposing for this idea of Rohith Act, it was those young students. I mean, it's a different question, but they're young students along with Mrudula and many more civil society groups who came together with one round of meeting that culminated in this entire People's Campaign. And to kind of note that someone who was silent at University of Hyderabad could contribute to organizing of it, whether he stayed till long or not is a different question. But he, along with this group of young persons, have contributed towards developing of this act. I think many organizations have come forth because this was coming from independent collectives, not motivated by any kind of political aspirations, right? And that's where, when we were just reading out on the definition of discrimination, I was very moved. I became very emotional when some discussions were happening. In this, the discrimination was defined as, for the purpose of this act, means any intentional or unintentional action or omission that has an adverse effect on an individual or a group of individuals. This word omission has a lot of importance in the lives of 5 of us, in the life of Rohith Vemula, in the entire struggle. It was one act of omission of that fresh inquiry clause that led to this entire series of episodes of violence that was committed. To define that we have experienced discrimination. No, omission is not an act of discrimination. Omission could be illegal, yet Vice Chancellor has this discretionary power to do whatever kind of things, right? Now that gets ruled out with this particular kind of a definition, where an act of deliberate omission, you are often ignored in the classrooms. That is not an act of ignorance, that's purposive, right? There are certain laws that are there as post-matric scheme of scholarship. If students were not allowed any exemption from payment of fees, that's a deliberate act of omission, right? Where you have to constantly fight for this. Your lives have to be revolved around that. That's a deliberate act of omission. Non-implementation of reservations, that's a deliberate act of omission. It's a commission of an offense, right? Now all of these happen from the top layered administrative bureaucracy, right? Now to kind of frame this law, that's where I became a bit more emotional when I was reading this. And one more thing, thanks to Mridula for having worked out on that, which is the right to overcome caste prejudice. And this is where the communions comes into place. This is where organizing comes into place. This is where ASA or any Dalit Bahujan organizations presence in campuses is an attempt to overcome caste-based prejudice. We are organizing to overcome caste-based prejudice. We are not organizing to perform caste. Unlike certain of those who perform caste, we are organizing to overcome caste-based prejudice. And this gives an entitlement, a right to organize. Oftentimes when universities or administrations the tactics are to sabotage these modes of organizing. This gives a certain form of right to organize. And this right to organize is not meant as a right of, disruption in the sense of cultural senses should exist. Otherwise, these spaces will become more and more alienated, right? However, this right to organize is also an expression of communion, is an expression of self-worth, self-respect in these meaningful exercises that we tend to do, right? And again, fear can be rooted individually. It is on account of this fear that many of us surrender to the forces, right? If I do not listen to that person, what will that person take an action on, right? Now, if this fear becomes individualized and if everyone becomes part of the Brahminical force, right, then your collective interests are lost. That can only be averted through collective organizing, right? That's where we have survived and we want to survive for these collective organizations, through this collective organizing towards the exercise of annihilation of caste. That's a longer exercise, but at least to feel disalienated, right? Not to get alienated, to have a sense of ownness, to have a sense of belonging. We want to organize. This is my appeal to everyone to ensure that these modes of organizing survives. If there's a rock on which we have written Jal Jangal Jameen, that implies we have made that an embodied space. If there is an auditorium where we have organized talk, that makes it an embodied space. If at Velivada or erstwhile North Shopping Complex, we were organizing songs of resistance, that was making that space an embodied space, which was otherwise not permitted to be. If installing a large portrait of Ambedkar is also to make this space an embodied space where I can feel myself belong in this institution. I think these practices must continue to exist and these must be defended under the right to overcome caste prejudice, because it is this organizing is not performing caste, rather it dismantles caste. And with this, I would like to also state, in the sense of identifying persons, it is how they tend to respond that matters the most. This is 10th year of Rohith's institutional murder. This is also 10th year of Una struggle, and that was led by Jignesh. Now, Jignesh is not a leader of the movement. Jignesh is a member of Legislative Assembly. And when one approaches Jignesh, when Jignesh says, brother, I'll cancel any programs of mine, yet I'll come here. That usage of brother itself is sufficient. It's not placating oneself above or pushing other below. I think in campuses, we tend to use these phraseology, brother, sister, right, within organizational frameworks. That's a sense of attachment, love, through which we tend to organize these spaces. Like, we feel together, we feel owned, right? Visharadan Maharaj walked 10,000 kilometers. He may have difference of opinion on many themes, yet accepting criticism as long as it is scientific, it must be accepted. That's what K.G. Satyamurthy has said, right? Someone who walked away in founding a radical political organization for that organization not implementing what principles on which it stood for, right? So thus, everyone, and Advocate Ragunad, we had the best cross-examination ever. I have to reveal this. And this cross-examination, I don't know. I will not be able to speak about it because it's still in the legal domain. But I would like to state that those who have created falsities could not face the truth on the day. And one day will come, if this struggle persists, if everyone unites in the same spirit, it is no doubt we will have a victory. Even if we don't have a victory, there's a joy in fighting against falsification. There's a joy in resisting caste-based oppression. I think that's what we all stand for, and that's what Baba Saheb Ambedkar stood for, and that's what Ambedkar Students Association stood for. That's what 10 Dalit students who were rusticated in their 2002 have stood for by refusing to give an apology to get an entrance into the university, yet accepted the apology and walked out with a dignity. Now they are all serving in great positions in every university. If they would have given an apology, this wouldn't have much difference to their lives. But to community, it definitely makes a difference. It is their stories which has inspired us, right? In this spirit, we will for sure, as long as we are alive, we will carry this Justice for Rohith Vemula struggle. And no matter how many stays with this struggle or not, we are committed in taking this struggle on. I'd like to thank Padtabhi and Radhika for taking this struggle in the Supreme Court. If you see UGC notifying the UGC regulations, it is on account of them reaching out to the Supreme Court, and these guidelines, even if Rohith Act comes, it is the responsibility of the student organizations to ensure that act has a meaning, because many acts, many legislations existed in the past, but it is organizations that ensure that these acts have a meaning, have a purpose, and it is organizations that nurture ideas around the importance of these acts. With this, I would like to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to thank everyone for joining. I also appeal everyone to kind of be with us in this saga. I also to just say, Gita, your work on Brahminical patriarchy, not Brahminical patriarchy, that's a different thing, but your work on deconstructing gender, it was very important for us in the sense that the way in which you take the example of how the shaping of an idol by men would often result in masculine ideas, right? In the same way, even though anyone, so that's where our voices matters, right? All Dalits must speak, all Dalits must assert, all Dalits must write, all Dalits must share their experiences to dismantle the artifacts that are created by this caste, Hindu hegemony in these universities, in the public spaces. That's where all of us should collectively share this experience and march forward in the ideals of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Thank you. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, Anna. Ragunad Bhi is a High Court advocate in Andhra Pradesh. He was the Vice President of Civil Liberty Committee in Telangana and has also served as the President of the Bar Council. Throughout his career, he has taken up various cases related to caste discrimination, atrocity, and land right, and championed the cause of social justice. He has offered his legal support throughout Justice for Rohith Vemula movement. We welcome Advocate Ragunad sir to address the gathering.
First of all, I deeply appreciate and congratulate the Ambedkar Students Association in organizing the post Rohith Vemula incident from the day even till today without any break, consistently taking up this cause. And the way, really wonderful the way the Prashant has delivered. Whenever there is a matters, Prashant and all ASA students who comes to the office, बहुत silent से बैठते हैं, लेकिन इतनी बेहतरीन, बहुत vocal, I was really very, very happy to see this have spoken. Friends, I'll just focus on why we need Rohith Vemula Act. Because of the time constraint and also there are other very important speakers to speak. Why we need. And we may also have a question within ourselves that when there is already an act like a CST Prevention of Atrocities Act, what makes the difference or what is the necessity to have a new act? This is an ordinary man can also get the doubt. First of all, we have to understand that the Indian society is basically of twofold of things which are very essential to understand. One is the caste bias and another one is the class bias. This caste bias you can see in all the institutions. Even judiciary is not an exception to this, my friends. You know, why we could see in the modern days this deaths had been taking place in the universities in the form of suicides. Why could not able to notice even before this? Basically, when you see post-emergency, the depressed classes from the marginalized have started coming into the higher education and the universities. Before pre-emergency, you know, there was no space at all. Dalits even, they could not have an access to the education. When the movement has started the post-emergency, and in the modern days we could able to see the Dalits entering into the universities, could not tolerate by the dominant caste. That is one of the strong reasons to see such an institutional discrimination. Just I have seen the report in that Rohith Vemula where the Union Law Minister himself has reported to the Parliament that more than 200 plus deaths had taken place in various universities. And out of 200 plus, nearly majority of the deaths were from the depressed class. Dalits have died. And thousands of students were dropped out from the universities because of various reasons of discrimination on the students. The history speaks that no ruler in the world, in the entire history, that out of the love of the people, they have given us the rights. Rights we could only achieve through the struggles. That is the reason I don't believe even today that these government would come up with an act. Only we can achieve the act, Rohith Vemula Act, by great struggles, by student movements, civil society, lawyers, academicians should come on the streets, and we have to fight. Then only we could able to achieve the Rohith Vemula Act. You know, to get an act of 1989 SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, how many of Dalits have sacrificed their lives? Hundreds of thousands have sacrificed their lives and met with atrocities. When an incident has taken place in Karamchedu in 1984, or then if you see Chundur in 1992, the situation was so pathetic was that even today in India, in our country, a victim of atrocity, to register an FIR, you know, minimum is at least you have to organize a protest in the form of dharna or a huge meetings, or else you have to approach the courts by way of filing the writ petitions. This is a situation now prevailed. With a great difficulty, with the help of the civil society or the activists, if you could able to approach the police, the FIR could be registered, but that would be at the interest of the station house officer. He'll say, remove names, so and so names should not be there in the complaint. Boy, he's an influential man, you know, it's very difficult for us. This is how the spirit of the complaint would be entirely changed. You can see now the perpetrators of the institutional murder are now they're set free. They are not facing any criminal prosecution. But whereas the victims, those who have raised the voice against the injustice, are now facing the trial. And the post-Rohith Vemula death, there was a huge protest across, not only in the Hyderabad Central University, but we have witnessed across the country internationally. But when you see so far of the university, number of FIRs were registered against the students and also academicians on all flimsy grounds. Protest is a basic fundamental right, but at the instance of university authorities, politicians, it has been criminalized. Now, very interesting, our cases when we have faced lodged a complaint, without the notice to the complainant, you have closed it. Though the law mandates that if you want to close, if you want to file a closure report, you have to give a notice to the complainant. There is no notice at all. But so far as the cases concerned on the students, You are hunting through the warrants, chasing, sending the notices through the WhatsApp. This is the nature, the state. Though there are different forms of atrocities, you see, nowadays we see the honor killings. Right to choice has become a crime. Now there is institutional discrimination which has led to many to commit suicide, and also some have left the universities. When the Act of 1989 SC/ST Act was drafted, now the draft which now we see in 2025, during that period, the persons who are drafted, they were not have any, the understanding or reachable to the urbanized discrimination. That is the reason in the original SC/ST Prevention Atrocities Act, you only see rural atrocities, where the atrocities are 10 to 12 atrocities were identified. Those atrocities are more concentrated at the village level. Feudals, semi-feudals, upper caste dominants, a right to, you are denied to have an access to the public well. In fact, it is a right to have an access to the well. Then that is the reason all the atrocities which are identified, those in 1989. But when an amendment had taken place in 2015, you could see a large number of atrocities were identified. Social boycott in 1980s could not be identified. Now in 2015, the social boycott is an atrocity. Right to vote by a Dalit is an error. Now it's if you stop, it is an atrocity. The right of a choice to choose to vote to whom is also a right. Therefore, today the biggest challenge before all of us, we have to redefine the rights which are achieved through these struggles are now being slowly taken away, one after the other. And courts are totally hostile. 90% of the judges in this country, they do not know that the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act is existing. And it's day in, day out, it's a big burden to us to say that what are the rights of victims. That is the reason 90% of the cases end up at the stage of filing charge sheets. Under these circumstances, what I particularly say that to achieve this Rohith Vemula Act, we are all the academicians, those who love the rights, those who believe in equality, those who believe in human society, all have to come together. We all have to raise the voice, protest against this state pathetic situation, very passive. In fact, this Congress government has promised a long back that the moment we come into the power, we would come up with the act. But till today, there is no such any movement from the state government. Of course, we know about what would be the fate in the central government. The way, if you see, you do not find in this country one sumoto state has got registered an FIR when an atrocity had taken place. You do not find anywhere in this country. unless a victim goes to the police station, stands in the police station for hours together, and he was not made to sit, but the accused will just straight away go and sit before the sub-inspector or police officer. And nowadays it is another strategy which has come up in all the atrocities cases is that counter case. The moment a case is, we go to the police station to lodge the complaint, the police will invite the accused to lodge a complaint and start bargaining which one, whether do you want the both to be registered in FIRs. And there will be a long delay of filing an FIR, registration of FIR, and the accused will take an advantage of defective FIR, delay in FIR, reasons are not mentioned. And then you see the class bias in the same fashion, very effective FIRs. The state, in 90% of the cases, like in UAPA, the states are the complainants. Sumotor complaints are registered. An effective investigation. You see, for example, in the same case, Rohith Vemula, in this crime, Prashant, in all these cases, apprehended, arrests were taken place, sent to the judicial remands. In spite of statutory provisions are there. That is the reason in the higher judiciary particularly, when the matters come up like atrocity cases, there is no fair trial at all because they are not aware of it. There is no such a sensitization among the judges to deal with the cases of atrocities. They are set free immediately on the bails. Therefore, what I appeal to all, to you, that to achieve these CST prevention of atrocities, it took more than 4 to 5 decades. Now this is almost 10 years we have crossed from the day we have been demanding for a Rohith Vemula Act. Even till today there is no, it has not moved any step further. Therefore, we all have to come together and consistently we have to plan a program and which we have to build up a pressure, because we see in the history that neither the judiciary nor the state, unless there is a movement, social movement outside, the favorable judgments would not expected from the judiciary or from the state. With this, let us all fight together collectively until we realize the justice in Rohith Vemula's struggle. Thanking you for that.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker embodies the spirit of compassionate resistance against Brahmanical cruelty. Radhika Vemula became an icon of resistance and resilience for all those who struggled for a life of self-respect. After the institutional murder of her son, Rohith, despite the excruciating pain of losing her son, she traveled extensively across the country, not just to seek justice for Rohith, but also for the cause of annihilation of caste. She has stood with the struggling student communities all over the country. Her words encourage the students not to give up, but fight back. She is still continuing her fight to get justice for her son murdered by the Brahmanical power structures of this country. We invite Amma to address the gathering.
అందరికీ జై భీములు. నేను ఎక్కువసేపు మాట్లాడలేను, అందుకని ఒక 2-3 మినిట్సే మాట్లాడగలుగుతాను. ఎందుకంటే మీకు అందరికీ తెలిసే ఉంటుంది, ఈ మధ్యకాలంలో నాకు హెల్త్ అస్సలు బాగలేదు. అయినా కూడా నేను ఇక్కడికి వచ్చాను. ఎందుకంటే నా ఊపిరిన్నంత కాలం నేను రోహిత్ దగ్గరికి రావాలనుకున్నాను. చాలా కష్టపడేసి ఆక్కుంటా మధ్యలో వచ్చాను. నేను ఎన్ని గంటలకు బయలుదేరానంటే రాత్రి 2 గంటలకు బయలుదేరి నేను వచ్చేటికి 9 అయింది మార్నింగ్.
Hello everyone, Jai Bhim. What Amma wants to convey is that because her health is not supporting, she cannot speak for a long time. So in this way, she would like to speak for 2-3 minutes. Also, because of her flailing health, she has said that she started last night at 2 o'clock and she had to take intermittent breaks to reach here. So she, in that way, she says that she cannot give more than 2-3. And also, and also, as long as she lives, she's going to fight for this. That is what she wants to convey.
మేమందరం ఎంతో కష్టపడేసి మీకోసమే ఫైట్ చేయడానికి ఎక్కడెక్కడి నుంచో దూరం నుంచి పాయల్ తాని వాళ్ళ మమ్మీ, జిగ్నేష్ మేవాని, రఘునాథ్ సార్ గారు, వీళ్ళందరూ ఎంతో కష్టపడి వాళ్ళ టైం అంతా కూడా కేటాయించుకొని మేము వస్తే మీరందరూ మధ్యలో లేచి వెళ్ళిపోతా ఉన్నారు. ఒక పూట మేము చెప్పేది వినలేరా మీరు? మీకోసమే కదా మేము ఫైట్ చేసేది. చాలా బాధగా ఉంది నాకు.
She appeals to the student community and all other members that we have reached, we are all the victims of this, we are all the mothers of this killed, institutionally murdered sons and daughters. We have come from a long place to say something, but if few people are living in between, it's sort of saddening for us. So she appeals us to stay for as long as the event is over.
వీళ్ళు ప్రతి సంవత్సరం చెప్పే మాటే కదా అనేసి అనుకుంటున్నారేమో. నెక్స్ట్ ఇయర్ నుంచి మనం ఏం చేద్దామంటే రోహిత్ స్టాచ్యూ దగ్గరే ఈ మీటింగ్ ఏర్పాటు చేసేయండి. ఇది ఆడిటోరియం వద్దు, ఏమొద్దు, వీళ్ళు కూర్చోలేకపోతున్నారు కాబట్టి అక్కడే కాసేపు వినేసేసి వెళ్ళిపోతారు. తలా 2 మినిట్స్ 3 మినిట్స్ అనేసి మనం అందరం అనుకొని కొంచెం సేపే, అంత ప్రొలాంగ్ చేసి చెప్పకుండా కొంచెం సేపే చెబుదాము. అట్లా చేద్దాం నాన్న ఈసారి.
She feels that the event doesn't have to have a necessity to be conducted followed by the commemoration in North Shopcom, because if this is bothering us and we are unable to stay for a long time, what is the point of having such long event?
మీరు డిస్క్రిమినేషన్ అనుభవిస్తా మీరు ఎంత బాధపడుతున్నారని మేము ప్రతిరోజు ప్రతి క్షణం మేము బాధపడుతూనే ఉంటాం. మేమేం చేయాలని మీ గురించి మేము ఆలోచించుకుంటా ఉంటాం, ఏం చేస్తే బాగుంటుందని. మాకేదో సంవత్సరం ఒక్కసారి కొంచెం టైం దొరికిందనేసి మేము మాట్లాడుతున్నాం, కానీ మీరు వింటారని ఇంక ఇది కూడా వినలేకపోతే మీరు కొంచెం బాధ అనిపిస్తూ ఉంటుంది.
This is a soul-searching thing. Achha, so we all travel from a long place, not just thinking about our martyrs like Rohith Vemula or people like Adavi, but we also think about you as a generation that is taking the flag forward, caravan forward. We come to say something for you because we are with you. We are traveling with you, and she wants to. I think she expects a lot of solidarity from us by staying here.
ఇప్పుడు నాకు మీరందరూ నా వెంట ఉన్నారని చాలా సంతోషపడ్డాను. ఎప్పటికీ ఉంటారని కూడా నేను అనుకుంటున్నాను. అట్లనే నా వెంట ఉండండి మీరు నా వెంట.
All the time she feels that whatever the courage that she had has also come from within herself, and it's also coming from you, which she could, but given the circumstances how it is going, she also hopes that although she says that I spoke like that, I still feel that there is a hope that we can reinvigorate ourselves and do something.
ఇప్పుడు నేను ఎందుకు అట్లా మాట్లాడానంటే నాన్న, నాకేం జరిగిందంటే నాకు హార్ట్ అటాక్ వచ్చింది ఆల్రెడీ. అంటే నేను పోయితే నాకు సిపిఆర్ చేసి నన్ను మళ్ళీ రప్పించారు. అట్లాంటి సిచ్యువేషన్లో నేను మిమ్మల్ని కలవాలని, మీకు ఏదో చెప్పాలని, మీకోసం నేను వచ్చాను కాబట్టి అట్లా ఖాళీ అవుతుంటే కొంచెం బాధగా ఉండి నేను అన్నాను, ఏం బాధపడబాకండి మీరు, నేను అమ్మనే, మీరు పిల్లలు.
She says that so she feels that as a mother she has the right to shout at kids or say this to kids, saying that she is in despair. But I think I also take a lenience in saying what I should say. Yeah.
ఇప్పుడు పాయల్ తాన్వి వాళ్ళ మమ్మీ చెప్పినట్లుగా క్యాన్సర్ కంటే బాధాకరమైంది ఈ కుల వివక్ష అని చెప్పారు. దానికంటే కూడా ఈ కరోనా లాంటిది. కరోనా వస్తే కుప్పలు జనాన్ని ఒక గొయ్యి తీసి గొయ్యిలో వేసి కాల్చి పెట్టారు చూడు, అంత ప్రమాదకరమైంది. కానీ ఒక వ్యాక్సిన్ వచ్చింది దానికి. ఆ వ్యాక్సినే రోహిత్ యాక్ట్ వచ్చింది కాబట్టి ఎవ్వరు భయపడొద్దు, సమన్వయం పాటించండి. కొద్ది కాలంలోనే అంత మంచిగా జరుగుద్ది. ఎక్కడో ఒక చోట బ్రేక్ ఉంటుంది తప్పకుండా, ఆ బ్రేకే రోహిత్ యాక్ట్.
Amma feels that caste discrimination is like a coronavirus, but despite of that, we could found a vaccine that could fight coronavirus. Likewise, she feels and she asserts that Rohith Act is something that it can work as an antidote. And in this regard, still the discrimination is going on. So she, as a motherly support, she says that we shouldn't lose courage, and she feels that she's there.
ఇక్కడ ఒక పక్క నుంచి రోహిత్ వేముల కేసులో సుశీల్ కుమార్ని రఘునాథ్ సార్ గారు బాగా వాదిస్తున్నారు. వారి దగ్గర నుంచి ఆ తప్పులు అవన్నీ బయట పెడుతున్నారు. తప్పకుండా జరుగుతుంది ఏదైనా, కాకపోతే కొంచెం లేటు. మంచి జరగడానికి ఎప్పుడు లేటే జరుగుద్ది. చెడు తొందరగా వెళ్ళిద్ది, ప్రజల్లోకి తొందరగా వెళ్ళిద్ది, చేయటం కూడా తొందరగా చేస్తాము. అందుకని చెడు తొందరగా జరుగుద్ది, మంచి కొంచెం లేటుగా జరుగుద్ది. కానీ ఎవరు బాధపడద్దు, మనకి రోహిత్ యాక్ట్ వచ్చింది. ఇప్పుడు కర్ణాటకలో జరుగుతుంది, రేపో మాపో తెలంగాణలో కూడా జరుగుద్ది. అట్లాగా ఒక రాష్ట్రం తర్వాత ఒక రాష్ట్రంలోకి వస్తుంది. పిల్లలందరూ కూడా సమన్వయం పాటించండి, మంచిగా చదువుకోండి, మీకు ఏ బాధ ఉండదు. మీకోసం నేను చచ్చిపోయిన దాన్ని కూడా బతికాను నాన్న, అది గుర్తుంచుకోండి. మీ ప్రేయర్ వల్లనే నేను బతికాను, మీ అందరి కోసం నేను బతికాను.
Amma feels that since we are the students, we come up from marginalized sections, there is a possibility for us to feel frustrated with the system, and a lot of times we lose our courage. But she says that there is a hope, the sustainable hope which we have to believe in. She also feels that I forgot to say in the preceding lines what she wanted to say is that she saw death, but she could come back again, she could fight, she has the spirit only because the love is coming from you and coming from us.
నేను ఎక్కడున్నా కూడా నేను మీకోసం ఉన్న సంగతి గుర్తుంచుకోండి. నాకు ఏదన్నా బాధ అనిపిస్తే నాకు తెలియచేయండి. నేను ఫస్ట్ నుంచి 10 years నుంచి అదే మాట అంటున్నాను, కానీ ఒక్కరు కూడా చెప్పట్లేదు. మరి ఎందుకని చెప్పట్లేదు? నేను చేయలేని దాన్ని అనుకుంటున్నారు, నేను రాలేని దాన్ని అనుకుంటున్నారు. ఈ మధ్యకాలంలో కూడా చాలా గొడవలు జరిగినాయి అంటే యూనివర్సిటీలో, నాకు తెలియచేయలేకపోయారు మీరు. రోహిత్ వేముల కంటే ముందు చాలా మంది పిల్లలు కూడా చనిపోయారంట, నాకు పిల్లలు చెప్పారు. రోహిత్ వేముల చనిపోయినప్పుడు నేనేం చేశానంటే గుడ్డిగా నాకు ఎంతగా జరుగుద్ది, నాకు అసలు నాకు తెలవని కూడా తెలియదు. నేను అసలు బయటకు వచ్చే మనిషిని కాదు, నా పని నేను చేసుకునే ఉండే మనిషిని. ఈ విషయం మీకు ఎన్నిసార్లు చెప్పాను, మీకు గుర్తుండే ఉంటుంది. గుడ్డిగా కూర్చున్నా నేను. నా పిల్లోడిలాగా ఇంకో పిల్లోడు చనిపోకూడదు, నాకు కావాల్సింది అది ఒక్కటే అన్నట్టు. నేను ఎంత ఏడుస్తున్నానో నాకు తెలుసు, ఇంకొక తల్లి ఏడవకూడదనే ఉద్దేశంతో నేను కూర్చున్నాను. మొన్న 14వ తారీఖున ఢిల్లీ నుంచి ఒక ప్రెస్ ఒక అతను వచ్చేసి అమ్మ ఎట్లాగా మూమెంట్ చేయాలి అని చేస్తున్నారు మీరు అని అడిగితే అంటే నాకు చెప్పడానికి కూడా నాకు రాదు. నేను వాళ్ళు కూర్చోమన్నారు, వీళ్ళు కూర్చోమన్నారు, నేను ఏదో చెయ్యాలని కూర్చున్నాను అని చెప్పడానికి కూడా రాదు. నేను చాలా గుడ్డిగా ఫాలో అయ్యానండి. నా పిల్లోడిలాగా ఇంకొక పిల్లోడు చావకూడదని గుడ్డిగా ఫాలో అయ్యానని అట్లానే చెప్పుకొచ్చాను. ఆయన దాన్నే రాసుకొని సంతోషంగా నవ్వాడు ఆ మాటకి.
Amma feels that, to reiterate, that she's always been saying that she was a very dormant housemaker at her household until Rohith Vemula has succumbed to this institutional murder. So it took at least for the last 10 years, she knew the world. That is what she says. That she so when an advocate in Delhi has asked her, like, how do you deal or navigate in this world, she says that she doesn't want another Rohith Vemula to be a trajectory of a person to be another Rohith Vemula. That is what she wants to. She's saying that she's going to live, she's going to fight as long as that caste discrimination gets her.
నేను ఇప్పుడు పోయిన మనిషిని బతికున్నాను అంటే నేను ఇంకా ఏంటో చెయ్యాలని నేను బ్రతికానని అనుకుంటున్నాను. నాకు ఇప్పుడు నా మనసులో నేనేం చెయ్యాలా, ఇంకా ఏం చేయగలను అని నేను ఆలోచిస్తున్నాను. మీకు ఏదైనా చెయ్యాలి, నేను అది కూడా చాలా మంచిగా ఇప్పుడు చేసిన దానికంటే చేసిన దానికంటే కూడా ఇంకా మంచిగా చేయాలని ఆలోచిస్తున్నాను. నేను ఎప్పుడు మీ వెంట ఉంటాను, మీరందరూ నా వెంట ఉన్నారని నేను భావిస్తున్నాను. మీకేదన్నా బాధ కలిగినప్పుడు నాకు తెలియచేయండి, నాకు చేతనైనంత వరకు నేను చేస్తాను. లాస్ట్ ప్రాణం ఉన్నంత వరకు పోయేదాకా నేను మీకోసమే చేస్తాను. నేను ఏ పనైనా కూడా, ఎంత లావు పనైనా కూడా నేను చేయగలను, చేస్తాను.
She says that there is a purpose for her life after what she had gone through, what she had seen through in the last 6 months. She feels that there is something that she has to do after what she had gone through, because since she doesn't want there is another Rohith Vemula or another suicide to be happened, she urges the students community that she is there, she will be there as long as she can.
ఈ సంవత్సరం నేను రాలేనేమో అని బాధపడ్డాను. చనిపోయేటప్పుడు కూడా ఉద్యమం ఆగిపోయిద్దని అని చాలా బాధపడి పోయాను. ఎట్లానో రాజా దగ్గర ఉండబట్టి, అది నేను హాస్పిటల్లో ఉండబట్టి సిపిఆర్లు అవి చేసేసి నన్ను మళ్ళీ వెనక్కి రప్పించారు డాక్టర్స్. కానీ నేనేదో చేయాలనుకుంటున్నాను, తప్పకుండా చేస్తాను. మీరేం బాధపడబాకండి. మీకు ఏదైనా బాధ కలిగితే కొంచెం నాతో చెప్పటానికి ప్రయత్నించండి. ఇప్పుడు నేను ఇంతకంటే ఎక్కువ మాట్లాడదలుచుకోలేదు, మాట్లాడలేను నేను. అందరికీ జై భీమ్.
So when she was going through this illness, this thing, she thought the movement will be over or the movement might not be continued by. But she feels that after the second chance of life, she feels that there is a chance. She also, this is throughout the speech, there's a thread that she wanted to communicate, that the students community she's worried that there's a lot of violence that's happening on the campus. There are things that's happening on the campus which are not being communicated to her. She feels that she wants to know the updates on the campus, how you people are doing. She constantly wants to know how we are doing. She also says that she'll be carrying forward the movement along with us.
థ్యాంక్ యూ అమ్మా. మన తదుపరి వక్త డాక్టర్ విశారదన్ మహారాజ్, దళిత ఉద్యమకారుడు, న్యాయవాది, రాజకీయ నిర్వాహకుడు. 2011లో ఆయన దళిత శక్తి ప్రోగ్రాంను స్థాపించి ఎస్సీ, ఎస్టీ, బీసీ వర్గాలకు చెందిన వేలాది దళిత యువతను నాయకత్వానికి సిద్ధం చేశారు. గత 12 ఏళ్లుగా గ్రామ స్థాయిలో కులహింస బహిష్కరణ వ్యతిరేకంగా ఆయన పనిచేస్తున్నారు. 2017-2018లో 5,000 కిలోమీటర్ల పాదయాత్ర, 2022 నుంచి 23లో 10,000 కిలోమీటర్ల స్వరాజ్య పాదయాత్ర ద్వారా 32 జిల్లాల్లోని 3,000 గ్రామాలకు డాక్టర్ అంబేద్కర్ రాజ్యాంగాన్ని తీసుకెళ్లి ప్రజలకు చదివించి వినిపించారు. ధర్మ సమాజ్ పార్టీ అధ్యక్షుడిగా, అలాగే బీసీ, ఎస్సీ, ఎస్టీ సంయుక్త కార్యాచరణ కమిటీ జేఏసీ నాయకుడిగా అణగారిక వర్గాలకు ఐక్యత కోసం ఆయన నిరంతరం పోరాడుతున్నారు. Our next speaker is Dr. Visharadan Maharaj, a Dalit activist, lawyer, and a political organizer whose work is rooted in everyday realities of caste oppression. His politics begins not in air-conditioned halls, but at the grassroots levels, where caste is lived, enforced, and resisted. His vision is Bahujana Rajadhikaram, asserts that dignity, rights, and power must belong to the oppressed majority, not remain concentrated at the top. For more than 12 years, Dr. Maharaj has worked at the grassroots levels because caste violence and exclusion operates there in villages, classrooms, hostels, workplaces, etc. In 2011, he founded the Dalit Shakti program to build leadership from below, training thousands of Dalits educated youth among SC, ST, BC communities. He turned walking into resistance. A 5 kilometers Padayatra in 2017 and 18, and a 10,000 kilometers Swarajya Padayatra carrying Indian Constitution of Dr. Ambedkar through 3,000 villages in 32 districts. Village after village, he has taken Dr. Ambedkar's constitution to the people, reading it aloud, explaining it, and transforming it from distant document into a living weapon of political education, self-respect. As the chief of Dharma Samaj Party, he continues to travel to village and village, proving that power is not gifted, it is claimed step by step. He is also a convener of BC, SC, ST Joint Action Committee to strengthen the collective struggles across the oppressed communities. On Rohith Shadadin, his presence reminds us that justice must rise from the ground up. Thank you, sir. Please welcome, sir.
Dr. Visharadan Maharaj ko jai bhim salam. Jai bhim salam. Dr. Visharadan Maharaj ko jai bhim salam. Jai bhim salam. Dilo 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 din salam. Din salam din salam din salam din salam.
రోహిత్ వేముల పది సంవత్సరాల సంస్మరణ సభకు హాజరైనటువంటి సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీ స్టూడెంట్స్ అండ్ స్కాలర్స్ అండ్ ప్రొఫెసర్స్, వేదిక మీద ఉన్నటువంటి గుజరాత్ ఎమ్మెల్యే జిగ్నేష్ మెవాని అండ్ మై ఫ్రెండ్స్ అడ్వకేట్ రఘునాథ్ గారు అండ్ భాంగ్య బుక్యా ప్రొఫెసర్ గారు, వేముల రోహిత్ గారి అమ్మగారికి, అందరికీ జై భీమ్, జై భారత రాజ్యాంగం. బాధితులు ఏడుస్తూ ఉంటారు, దుఃఖపడతారు. క్షత్రియులు యుద్ధం చేస్తారు. అసలు రోహిత్ వేముల పరాజితుడా విజేత అర్థం కావడం లేదు. అంబేద్కర్కి ఇష్టమైనవి రెండు. ఒకటి సిస్టమ్ మీద తిరుగుబాటు చేసే రెబల్ అంటే ఇష్టం అన్నాడు. రెండు ఓట్ అనేది రెండవ ఇష్టం అంబేద్కర్కి. సిస్టమ్ మీద తిరుగుబాటు అనే యుద్ధాన్ని రోహిత్ ప్రారంభించకపోవడానికి కారణం ఏంటి? అసలు ఏ సిస్టమ్ మర్డర్ చేసింది రోహిత్ని? ఇది యూనివర్సిటీ అంటే కోట్ల మంది సామాన్యమైన కూలీనాలి చేసుకునే ప్రజానికానికి దారి చూపే దారిదీపమే యూనివర్సిటీ. అంటే శిష్ట వర్గాన్ని ప్రొడ్యూస్ చేస్తూ ఉంటుంది యూనివర్సిటీ. ఒక బ్రాహ్మణికల్ సమాజాన్ని కట్టినది, డిజైన్ చేసింది ఒక క్రిమినల్ సొసైటీ అయితే దాన్ని డిస్మెంటల్ చేసి కౌంటర్ ఇంటలెక్చువల్స్ని ప్రొడ్యూస్ చేసేది కూడా మన వర్గాల నుంచి ఒక శిష్ట వర్గం రావాలి, ఒక ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్డ్ క్లాస్ ఒకటి రావాలి. మన వర్గాల నుంచి ప్రభావశీలమైన వర్గం, ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్డ్ క్లాస్ రావడానికి ఎక్కడి నుంచి రావాలి అంటే యూనివర్సిటీ నుంచి రావాలి. మన యూనివర్సిటీ నుంచి ఒక ప్రభావిత శిష్ట వర్గం ఒకటి వస్తే ఆ వర్గమే మన సమాజాన్ని మార్చి మనకు కావలసిన ఒక వ్యవస్థ నిర్మాణం చేస్తూ ఉంటుంది. అలాంటప్పుడు యూనివర్సిటీలో ఈ హైదరాబాద్ మహానగరంలో అంబేద్కర్ కోరుకున్న ఒక శిష్ట వర్గము, ఒక పెద్ద ప్రభావిత వర్గం రోహిత్ వేములకి తోడై ఉన్నట్లయితే లక్షలాది మంది అంబేద్కర్ ఉద్యమాన్ని నడిపే ఒక పెద్ద ప్రభావిత యుద్ధమే జరిగి ఉన్నట్లయితే ఆ సమాజం అంతా రోహిత్ వేములని కాపాడేది. బాడీలో అత్యంత శక్తిమంతుడు రోహిత్ వేముల. న్యాచురల్ ఎమోషన్స్లో బహుశా భారతదేశంలోనే అత్యంత శక్తివంతుడు రోహిత్ వేముల. బట్ తాత్విక చింతనలో అత్యంత బలహీనుడా? తన న్యాచురల్ ఎమోషన్స్ కన్వర్ట్ ఇంటూ ఇంటలెక్చువల్ ఎమోషన్స్. ఇది జరగలేదా రోహిత్ వేములలో? ఇది జరిగి ఉన్నట్లయితే రాజశేఖర్ రెడ్డి కొడుకు జగన్మోహన్ రెడ్డి అతను పడ్డ వివక్షతలన్నీ ఎదుర్కొని తాను పడ్డ బాధలన్నింటినీ, వివక్షతలన్నింటినీ ఎదుర్కొని పొలిటికల్ పవర్ అనే రాజ్యం కోసం పోరాటం చేశాడు. ఎందుకు? రెడ్డిలో ఉన్న ఒక శిష్టవర్గం అంతా జగన్మోహన్ రెడ్డిని కాపాడుకుంది. రోహిత్ వేములకి ఒక శిష్టవర్గం లేకుండా పోయింది, ఒక ప్రభావిత వర్గం. ఎవరి ప్రభావిత వర్గం? 2-3 సార్లు అంటున్న మాట. అంబేద్కర్ చెప్పిన తత్వశాస్త్రంతో ప్రయాణం చేసే ఒక యుద్ధం, ఒక ఉద్యమం, ఒక రూపాయుండి, జ్ఞానముండి, తత్వముండి ప్రయాణం చేసే ఒక అంబేద్కర్ ఉద్యమాన్ని నడిపించే ఒక సమూహం రోహిత్ వేములకి తోడు కాలేదు. అందుకని బ్రాహ్మణికల్ సిస్టమ్ మర్డర్ చేసిందా రోహిత్ వేములని? అంబేద్కర్ నుంచి విడుదలయ్యే శిష్టవర్గం లేకపోబట్టి మనలోటుతో చనిపోయాడా రోహిత్ వేముల? అంబేద్కర్ కోరుకున్నది నా ద్వారా కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ద్వారా ఎవరు లాభపడ్డరో బెనిఫిషరీ అంబేద్కర్ ఇచ్చిన తత్వశాస్త్రాన్ని తీసుకోవడం, అంబేద్కర్ ఇచ్చిన ఫ్రూట్ తీసుకోవడం, ఈ రెండు తీసుకొని మీరు యుద్ధం చేయండి అని అంబేద్కర్ చెప్పాడు. ఆ యుద్ధం చేసే సమూహం అంతా తమ జాతిని రక్షించే ప్రయాణం జరిగి ఉన్నట్లయితే కారంచేడులో కూడా చనిపోకపోయేవారు, చుండూరులో చనిపోకపోయేవారు, రోహిత్ వేముల కూడా చనిపోకపోయేవాడు. అంబేద్కర్ నుంచి బెనిఫిట్ అయినటువంటి లాభపడ్డ అంబేద్కర్ చెప్పిన ఆ పండు తిని అంబేద్కర్ ఫ్రూట్ తీసుకొని అంబేద్కర్ ఒక ధర్మాన్ని చెప్పినప్పుడు దాని ద్వారా దాని ప్రయాణం చేసిన సమూహం తమ జాతిని రక్షించుకునే ప్రోగ్రాం ఏది? వాళ్ళు లేకపోవడం వల్ల కారంచేడులో మాదిగలు ఒంటరి వాళ్ళు అయ్యారు. ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళని రక్షించే నాయకత్వం ఏది? అంబేద్కర్ నాయకుల్ని సృష్టించాలనుకున్నాడు. ఎవరో నాయకులు? రాజ్యాంగం ద్వారా కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ద్వారా బెనిఫిట్ అయిన వాడు లీడర్ కావాలనుకున్నాడు. కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ద్వారా బెనిఫిట్ అయినవాడు విశ్రాంతిలో ఉన్నాడు. కారంచేడులో మాదిగలు చనిపోయారు. కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్లో ద్వారా బెనిఫిట్ అయిన వాడు విశ్రాంతిలో ఉన్నాడు. చుండూరులో చనిపోయారు. రోహిత్ వేముల కూడా చనిపోయాడు. ఉత్తరప్రదేశ్లో కాన్షీరామ్ యుద్ధం ద్వారా ఒక 30 ఏళ్ళు 30 years ఉత్తర భారతదేశ యుద్ధ రంగంలో ఏ ఒక్క దళితుడు ఆత్మహత్య చేసుకోలేదు. వివక్షతని సవాల్గా తీసుకోవడం రాదా? సవాలేస్తుంది బ్రాహ్మణిజం మన మీద. సవాల్ని స్వీకరించాలి, దాన్ని సవాల్ అనుకోవాలి. ఛాలెంజ్గా ఎవరు తీసుకుంటారు? ఒకవేళ మహమ్మద్ వేముల రోహిత్ అయితే సవాల్గా తీసుకునేవాడు. వేముల రోహిత్ రెడ్డి అయితే సవాల్గా తీసుకునే శక్తి మొత్తం రెడ్లు ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళే. మనకెవరూ లేరు కదా. అంబేద్కర్ ద్వారా లాభపడ్డ లక్షల కోట్ల మంది ట్రీట్మెంట్ ఏది అసలు మన చుట్టూ? మార్గం చెప్పేవాడేడి రోహిత్ వేములకి? దారి చూపేవాళ్ళేది. అది రోహిత్ వేముల మరణానికి ముందు. రోహిత్ వేముల చనిపోయిన తర్వాత యూనివర్సిటీలో రోహిత్ వేముల కార్యక్రమంలో పాల్గొని ఆ తర్వాత ఎక్కడి వాళ్ళు అక్కడ వెళ్ళిపోతున్నారు. మళ్ళీ వచ్చే సంవత్సరం ఒక కొత్త తరం, మళ్ళా వచ్చే సంవత్సరం ఒక కొత్త తరం, మళ్ళీ వచ్చే సంవత్సరం ఒక కొత్త తరం. కానీ మిషన్ కంటిన్యూటీ ప్రోగ్రామ్ ఏది యూనివర్సిటీలో? అంబేద్కర్ కోరుకున్నదే శిష్టవర్గం యూనివర్సిటీస్ నుంచి రావడానికి. బ్రాహ్మణిజాన్ని కాపాడడానికి కావలసిన శక్తులు మొత్తం యూనివర్సిటీస్ నుంచి వచ్చినప్పుడు దాన్ని ఢీకొనే ప్రోగ్రాం కౌంటర్ ఇంటెలెక్చువల్స్ ఏరి ఇక్కడ. అసలు నాగ్పూర్ ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ మీద ద్వేషం ఎందుకు? మనం పని చేయలేకపోవడం వలన, వారు పని చేస్తూ ఉండడం వలన? చర్యకి ప్రతిచర్య నేచురల్ ప్రోగ్రాం కదా. నాగ్పూర్ ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ చర్య, ప్రతిచర్యది కౌంటర్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ ఏది? చర్య చేయడానికి, ప్రతిచర్య చేయడానికి మేము అశక్తులము అని ప్రపంచమంతా మాకు న్యాయం చేయండి అని తిరుగుతున్నారా మీరు? అడవిలో ఏ ఒక్క జంతువైనా న్యాయం చేయమని అడుగుతుందా? అడవంతా యుద్ధమే, ప్రతి జీవి యుద్ధమే. ఎవరిని అడుగుదాం న్యాయం చేయమని? రోహిత్ వేముల పేరుతో చట్టం వచ్చినా ఆ చట్టం అమలు కావడానికి నీ రాజ్యం ఏది అని అడుగుతున్నా. మళ్ళీ రఘునాథ్ ఎందుకు ఈ చట్టం అమలు కావట్లేదని మళ్ళీ వకాలత్ తీసుకోవాలి. నేను రోహిత్ వేముల కోరుకునే అంబేద్కర్ రాజ్యం కోసం యుద్ధం చేస్తున్నాను. నాకు కావాల్సింది రోహిత్ కోరుకున్న రాజ్యం కావాలి. ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ ప్రోగ్రాంకి కౌంటర్ ప్రోగ్రాం చేయలేని మౌన జాతులు 70 కోట్ల మంది బీసీ ఎస్సీ ఎస్టీలు. బ్రహ్మచర్యాశ్రమ ధర్మం, గృహస్థాశ్రమ ధర్మం, వానప్రస్థానాశ్రమ ధర్మం, సన్యాసాశ్రమ ధర్మం. బ్రాహ్మణులంతా, బ్రాహ్మణిజాన్ని ఫాలో అయ్యే వాళ్ళంతా లక్షల కోట్ల మంది వాళ్ళ బ్రహ్మధర్మం కోసం జీవితాలను త్యాగం చేసి బ్రహ్మవాక్యాన్ని కాపాడడానికి కోట్ల మంది బ్రాహ్మణులు త్యాగాలు చేసి వాళ్ళ సమాజాన్ని కట్టుకొని వాళ్ళ సంస్కృతిని, వాళ్ళ సమాజాన్ని, వాళ్ళ రాజ్యాన్ని నిర్మించి బ్రహ్మని బతికిస్తూనే ఉన్నారు. హరగోపాల్ బ్రహ్మ దాకా బతికిస్తున్నారు. అందుకని హరగోపాల్ కొడుకు హిడ్మా కాలేదు, ఇద్దరు ప్రొఫెసర్లు అయ్యారు. మన బిడ్డలు చనిపోతున్నారు. ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ ఇన్స్టిట్యూట్కి కౌంటర్ ప్రోగ్రాము సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీలో పుట్టాలి కదా. వాళ్ళ మీద ద్వేషం ఎందుకు? చర్యకి ప్రతిచర్య ఏది మనకి? అంబేద్కర్ ఒక తత్వశాస్త్రం, ఒక దీపస్తంభాన్ని చూపించాడు, ఒక లైట్ హౌస్ని, సాంస్కృతిక దీపస్తంభం. అది సాంస్కృతిక దీపస్తంభం అంటే అర్థం ఏంటి? ఒక మనిషి 2000 years బతకొచ్చా? ఒక మనిషి 3000 సంవత్సరాలు బతకొచ్చా? బతకొచ్చు. ఆలోచన ధారతో బ్రతకొచ్చు. 3000 సంవత్సరాల క్రితం నీ ఆలోచన ఒకటి ఉంటే ఆ ఆలోచన మరొక బిడ్డకి మరొక బిడ్డకి మరొక బిడ్డకి ఇచ్చుకుంటా పోతే ఇప్పుడున్న తరంలో కూడా అదే ఆలోచనతో బిడ్డ తయారైతే అతని ఏజ్ 3000 years. బ్రాహ్మణుడు తన ఆలోచన అట్లా బతికించుకోవడానికి త్యాగం చేస్తున్నాడు. రోహిత్ వేముల చనిపోయిన తర్వాత జరుగుతున్న సదస్సులో మీరు ఎందుకు వెళ్ళిపోతున్నారు అని అడుగుతుంది ఆ తల్లి. షేమ్, సిగ్గుపడాలి. యూనివర్సిటీలో ఈ గంట ఇక్కడ కూర్చోనోడివి నువ్వు బ్రాహ్మణిజం మీద ఏమి యుద్ధం చేస్తావు? సవాల్గా తీసుకోవడం క్షత్రియుడి లక్షణం. బాధపడడం, కన్నీరు కార్చడం బానిస లక్షణం. నువ్వు క్షత్రియుడువా, బానిసవా? నీ మీద దాడి జరిగిందంటే దాన్ని సవాల్గా తీసుకున్నాడు జగన్మోహన్ రెడ్డి. సవాల్గా తీసుకున్నాడు. తెలంగాణ మీద వివక్షత చేస్తున్న ఆంధ్ర వాళ్ళ పైన సవాల్గా తీసుకున్నాడు కేసీఆర్. తన రాజ్యాన్ని నిర్మించాడు. సవాల్, బానిసకి సవాల్ తీసుకోవడం తెలుసా? బానిస సవాల్గా తీసుకుంటాడా? సోల్, ఆత్మ తీసుకుంటుంది సవాల్. మరి సోల్ కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ అయిందా? మనకి సోల్ కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ అయిందా? సోల్ కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ కావాలి అంటే అంబేద్కర్ తత్వాన్ని నీ తత్వంగా మార్చుకున్నప్పుడు 70 కోట్ల మందిలో సవాల్గా తీసుకునే యుద్ధం ప్రారంభమైంది. ఏం చేయాలి మరి ఇప్పుడు? ఇంకో 10 ఏళ్ళు పెట్టుకుంటూ కార్యక్రమానికి పోదామా? రోహిత్ వేముల ఆవేదనకి, అతనిలో ఉన్న దుఃఖానికి మనం నివాళి అర్పించాలి. ఏ రూపంలో నివాళి అర్పిద్దాం? నివాళి అర్పించడానికి సగం మంది పోయారు. నివాళి రాజ్యాన్ని తీసుకొచ్చి ఆ తల్లి పాదాల దగ్గర పెట్టాలని ఇదే కార్యక్రమంగా తీసుకోవాలని కోరుతున్నాం మీ అందరినీ. అందుకనే బానిస తాను పడే వేదనకి, వివక్షతకి, తన మీద జరుగుతున్న దాడిని సవాల్గా తీసుకోవడం. సవాల్ ప్రతి సవాల్, చర్య ప్రతి చర్య, దాడి ప్రతి దాడి, ఇవి లేని సమాజం కదా మంది. వెళ్ళిపోయారు ఎక్కడోళ్ళు అక్కడ. 7-8 ఏళ్ల క్రితం కనపడ్డ వాళ్ళందరూ స్థిరపడ్డారు ఎక్కడోళ్ళు అక్కడ. ఒక ఎమోషన్ టైం యూనివర్సిటీలో, ఒక ఎమోషనల్ కెరీర్ కోసం బ్రతకడానికి యూనివర్సిటీకి వచ్చి ఆ వచ్చిన విద్యార్థి ఒక ఎమోషనల్కి గురై ఆ ఎమోషన్ నుంచి ఒక ప్రోగ్రామ్ ఇక్కడ అటెండ్ చేసిపోవడం. కానీ అంబేద్కర్ మిషన్ ఏది? నీవే అంబేద్కర్ మిషన్ని ఫాలో కాకపోతే గ్రామంలో కూలీనాలి చేసుకొని రక్త మాంసాలతో ఉడికించి రోజు అన్నం తెచ్చుకొని కడుపు నింపుకున్న కూలీ సమాజాన్ని కడతాడా? ఇది సాధ్యమా? మనం కట్టాలి సిస్టాన్ని. సమతా సైనిక్ దళ్, అంబేద్కర్ స్థాపించిన సమతా సైనిక్ దళ్ 100 years అయింది. అంబేద్కర్ కోరుకున్న, అంబేద్కర్ రాజ్యాంగం ద్వారా బెనిఫిట్ అయినోడు నా సమతా సైనిక్ దళ్ సాంస్కృతిక ఉద్యమాన్ని నిలబెడతాడు అనుకుంటే సమతా సైనిక్ దళ్ ఈరోజు ఇండియాలో అదృశ్యమైపోయింది. ఎవరి వల్ల? ఎవరి వల్ల సమతా సైనిక్ దళ్ అదృశ్యమైపోయింది? నాగపూర్ ఆర్ఎస్ఎస్ వలన? మన విశ్రాంతి వలన. అమ్మా, మన విశ్రాంతి వల్ల అంబేద్కర్ సమతా సైనిక్ దళ్ అదృశ్యమైందా? నాగపూర్ వల్ల అయిందా? బాధితుడు విశ్రాంతిలో ఉన్నాడు, నిందితుడు యుద్ధంలో ఉన్నాడు. ఎవరిని నిందిద్దామమ్మా? ఇంత డీప్గా నేను ఇంగ్లీష్లో చెప్పలేనని కసి తీర్చుకుంటున్నా తెలుగులో. ఎవరిని నిందిస్తారు ఇక్కడ? సహజ మరణం చెందుతారు హరగోపాల్ గారు, వారి కొడుకులు. వారి ఇంట్లో హిడ్మా పుట్టడు ప్రొఫెసర్ హరగోపాల్ గారు. మన ఇంట్లో హిడ్మా పుట్టాలి, అమరవీరుడు అని మళ్ళీ మనం ఒత్తుకోవాలి. అందుకనే ఒక శిష్ట వర్గం, ఒక ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్డ్ ప్రభావిత వర్గం, ఒక రూపాయి ఉండి కొద్దిగా విశ్రాంతి ఉండి ఆలోచనతో పనిచేసే ఒక ఇన్ఫ్లుయెన్స్డ్ వర్గం రోహిత్ వేములని చంపేసింది అనిపిస్తుంది అసలు. ఎందుకంటే కాంశీరామ్ యుద్ధంలో, మళ్ళీ చెప్తున్నా, అది వార్ జరుగుతుంది అక్కడ, రెడ్ల యుద్ధం జరుగుతున్నది. రెడ్ల యుద్ధంలో రెడ్లు ఆత్మహత్య చేసుకోరు. ఎందుకంటే వాళ్ళు సవాల్ తీసుకుంటున్నారు. సవాల్ తీసుకోవడం. అందుకని న్యాచురల్ ఎమోషన్స్తో ఉన్నటువంటి హయ్యెస్ట్ ఎనర్జీ పర్సన్, కన్నీళ్ళు కూడా భయంకరమైన ఒక శక్తి. సముద్రం అంత కన్నీళ్లు ఉన్నాయి రోహిత్ వేములలో. కన్నీళ్ళని తాత్వికంగా మార్చుకోలేకపోయాడు వేముల. కాబట్టి రోహిత్ వేముల లాంటి లక్షల మరణాలు, కోట్ల మరణాలకి పరిష్కారం రోహిత్ వేములకి నివాళి రాజ్యాన్ని తీసుకురావడం. అంబేద్కర్ రోహిత్ వేములని పైకి వెళ్ళాక అంబేద్కర్ని కలిసేటప్పుడు, పైన ఉన్న అంబేద్కర్ని రోహిత్ వేముల కలిసేటప్పుడు మొదట మాట్లాడే మాటలు ఇవే కావచ్చు. ఎందుకు ఈ పని చేశావు పరాజితుడా? నా తత్వంతో యుద్ధం చేసి ఉన్నట్లయితే, నీలో ఉన్న శక్తి మొత్తాన్ని తాత్వికంగా మార్చి యుద్ధం చేసి ఉన్నట్లయితే జగన్మోహన్ రెడ్డి స్థానంలో నువ్వే ముఖ్యమంత్రి అయ్యేవాడివేమో వేముల అని అంబేద్కర్ అనేవాడు. నేను రీసెర్చ్ పేపర్స్ లాగా ఏం మాట్లాడలేను. పరిష్కారం ఎట్లా అని ఆలోచిస్తున్నాను. అందుకనే ఈ సమాజం కల్చరల్ వాల్యూస్, మన సంస్కృతిని నిర్మాణం చేయడానికి ఒక ప్రభావిత వర్గం కావాలి. ప్రభావిత వర్గం విశ్రాంతిలో ఉంది ఈరోజు, ఇంకా చెప్పాలంటే సమాధిలో ఉంది. కాబట్టి చట్టం వస్తుంది, సంతోషం వేములది. ఈ చట్టాన్ని అమలు చేయడానికి మళ్ళీ పోరాటం జరగాలి. ఎందుకంటే సిస్టమ్ మనది కాదు, రాజ్యం మనది కాదు, సమాజం మనది కాదు, బలమైన సమూహం లేదు మనకి. ఎందుకంటే రాజ్యాంగమే అమలు కానప్పుడు రోహిత్ వేముల చట్టం ఏ మేరకు అమలు అవుతుంది? అయినా ఒక మరణం గుణపాఠం, ఒక గుణపాఠం దేశాన్ని కుదిపేసింది వేముల మరణం. కానీ దాని నుంచి గుణపాఠం తీసుకోవాలి మనం, ఒక పెద్ద పాఠం తీసుకోవాలి మనం. ఆ పాఠం తీసుకుంటే దీనికి మార్గం ఏంటి, దారేంటో తెలుస్తుంది. అందుకని యూనివర్సిటీలో ఒక మిషన్ నడవాలి. ఒక కాంగ్రెస్ పార్టీకి, ఒక బీజేపీ పార్టీకి, ఒక కమ్యూనిస్ట్ పార్టీకి కావలసిన మేధావి వర్గం అంతా, బ్రాహ్మణ మేధావి వర్గం అంతా యూనివర్సిటీలోంచి పుడుతూ ఉంటుంది. కానీ మనకి మేధావి వర్గమైన ఒక్క నాయకుడు యూనివర్సిటీ నుంచి పుట్టకపోయి మన సమాజాన్ని కాపాడే ఒక వారియర్, ఒక యుద్ధవీరుడు మనందరికీ నాయకత్వం వహించడానికి కార్ల్ మార్క్స్, అంబేద్కర్ యూనివర్సిటీస్ నుంచి 25 ఏళ్లలో 24 సంవత్సరాలకే యూనివర్సిటీస్ నుంచి భూగోళానికి జ్ఞానం ఇచ్చారు. భూగోళానికే జ్ఞానం ఇచ్చి భూగోళం మీద రాజ్యాన్ని ఎట్లా స్థాపించాలో యూనివర్సిటీ విద్యార్థులుగా ప్రపంచానికి మార్గం చూపారు. మన యూనివర్సిటీ విద్యార్థులు ఇలా కార్యక్రమాలు చేసి వెళ్తూ వాళ్ళ కెరీర్ కోసం వచ్చే సంవత్సరం ఎక్కడో వాళ్ళ అమ్మా నాన్నని సంతోషపెట్టడానికి ఎక్కడో సెటిల్ అవుతూ ఉంటారు. కాబట్టి దిక్కులేని ప్రజల్ని చేస్తున్నది మన ప్రభావిత వర్గం. దిక్కు చూపించాడు అంబేద్కర్, కానీ దిక్కులేని ప్రజల్ని చేస్తున్నది మనలో ఉన్న చదువుకున్న విద్యావంతుల వర్గం. దారి లేదు, దిక్కు లేదు, సమాజాన్ని నడి బజార్లో వదిలిపెట్టి చదువుకున్న విద్యావంతుల వర్గం అంతా వెళ్ళిపోయింది. కాబట్టి దాడులు కంటిన్యూ అవుతాయి. కాబట్టి మొత్తంగా చర్యకి ప్రతిచర్య లేకుండా మన ప్రజలు ఈ విధంగా కావడానికి కారణం మనకి సోల్ కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ కాలేదు. అందుకనే సేలబుల్గా మారిపోయాం, భయపడుతున్నాము, లొంగిపోతున్నాము, డబ్బులకి అమ్ముడుపోతున్నాము, ఎవరైనా పలకరిస్తే వాళ్ళ మాటకే లొంగిపోతున్నాము. 70 కోట్ల మంది బీసీ ఎస్సీ ఎస్టీలకి, ఇంకా చెప్పాలంటే 100 కోట్ల మంది పైన ఉన్న బీసీ ఎస్సీ ఎస్టీ ప్రజలకి సోల్ కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ కాలేదు. దాన్ని నిర్మాణం చేయడానికి దేశవ్యాప్తంగా భారతదేశంలో బీసీ ఎస్సీ ఎస్టీలకి ఒక మహోద్యమం నడవాలి. అది తెలంగాణ ప్రారంభించాలి ఇక్కడి నుంచి. ఆ ఉద్యమం దేశవ్యాప్తంగా ఒక ఆదర్శమై ఆ ఉద్యమంలో రిజర్వేషన్ ఎక్కడి నుంచి మొదలైంది అనే కథ మొదలుపెట్టి చెబితే కథ ఆత్మని తయారు చేస్తుంది. కథ ఆత్మని తయారు చేస్తుంది. తెలుసా మీకు అది? కథ ఆత్మని తయారు చేస్తుంది. శ్రీరాముడి కథ చెబితే భారత ప్రభుత్వం వచ్చింది. శ్రీరాముడి కథ చెబితే ఇండియన్ గవర్నమెంట్ ఫామ్ అయింది. తెలంగాణ కథ చెబితే తెలంగాణ రాజ్యం వచ్చింది. శ్రీరాముడు లేడని కరుణానిధి చెబితే ఆ కథకు కూడా రాజ్యం వచ్చింది తమిళనాడు. లేడని కూడా కథ చెప్పారు. లేడని కథ చెప్పినా రాజ్యం వచ్చింది, ఉన్నాడని కథ చెప్పినా రాజ్యం వచ్చింది, తెలంగాణ కథ చెప్పినా రాజ్యం వచ్చింది. పూలే అంబేద్కర్ కథ చెప్తే మన రాజ్యం వస్తుంది. కథ చెప్పే కథకుడు ఏడి అంటున్నా. కథ చెప్పేవాడేంటి? శిష్టవర్గం, ప్రభావిత వర్గం. అంబేద్కర్ 1,00,000 పేజీల రఫ్ నోట్స్ రాశాడు. ఎక్కడి నుంచి ప్రారంభమైంది మన చరిత్ర, ఎక్కడ నుండి ప్రారంభమైంది మన చరిత్ర, ఎన్నిసార్లు ఆత్మహత్య చేసుకోవాలి అంబేద్కర్ వివక్షతకి గురై. తన స్కూల్లో అడ్మిట్ అయిన దగ్గర నుంచి చనిపోయేంత వరకు ప్రతి సెకండ్ రోహిత్ లాగానే చచ్చిపోవాలి అంబేద్కర్. సావలే, సవాల్గా స్వీకరించారు. సవాల్, నా మీద సవాల్ వస్తుంది, నా మీద సవాల్ వస్తుంది, దానికి ప్రతి సవాల్ ఇసిరేయాలి. ఎందుకు? అంబేద్కర్ సామ్రాట్ అశోకుడి కొడుకు కాబట్టి సవాల్గా తీసుకున్నాడు. క్షత్రియుడు కదా, సవాల్గా తీసుకున్నాడు. అగ్రకులాలు సవాల్గా తీసుకుంటారు. మనం ఏడుస్తాం, ఫలానా వాళ్ళు కొట్టారు సార్, నన్ను అవమానపరిచారు, మనోవేదనకి గురవుతున్నా అంటాడు మనవాడు. ఏండ్ల తరబడి మనోవేదనకి గురవుతుండట. మనోవేదనకి గురికాడు క్షత్రియుడు, మనోవేదనకి గురి చేస్తాడు. అందుకని ఇదంతా అర్థం చేసుకొని బ్రాహ్మణీయ మనువాద ధర్మాన్ని బ్రతికించడానికి వాళ్ళు తరతరాలు యుగయుగాలు వాళ్ళెంత త్యాగాలు చేస్తున్నారో, వాళ్ళెంత కష్టపడుతున్నారో, ప్రతి సెకండ్ మేల్కొని ఎట్లా ఉంటున్నారో మనం కూడా మేల్కొని ఉండాలి. సోల్ యాక్టివ్ అయితే మేల్కొని ఉంటాం. అంబేద్కర్ వచ్చినప్పుడు బ్రాహ్మణిజం ఆత్మరక్షణలో పడిపోయింది. బ్రిటిష్ వాళ్ళు మొఘల్స్ డ్యామేజ్ చేసి అంబేద్కర్ రాగానే ఆత్మరక్షణలో పడిపోయింది బ్రాహ్మణిజం. కాన్షీరామ్ వార్ డిక్లేర్ చేసినప్పుడు బ్రాహ్మణిజం ఆత్మరక్షణలో పడింది. కానీ దాన్ని వాళ్ళు సవాల్గా స్వీకరించారు. కానీ మనం సవాల్గా స్వీకరించట్లేదు, దుఃఖపడుతున్నాం. కాబట్టి దుఃఖపడకుండా రోహిత్ వేముల అంబేద్కర్ దగ్గర ఉన్నాడు ఇప్పుడు ప్రజెంట్గా. మనం కూడా రోహిత్ వేముల దగ్గరికి వెళ్తాం 10 ఏళ్ల తర్వాత. రాజ్యాన్ని, అంబేద్కర్ కోరుకున్న సమాజాన్ని, రాజ్యాన్ని మనందరం తీసుకొచ్చి పైన ఉన్న రోహిత్ వేముల ద్వారా అంబేద్కర్ అపాయింట్మెంట్ కోరుకుందాం. సెలవు. జై భీమ్.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a resolute voice of constitutional morality and social justice, a Dalit leader, lawyer, and tireless social activist, Jignesh Mevani, currently serving as a member of the Gujarat Legislative Assembly from Vadgam. Deeply rooted in Ambedkarite thought and constitutional values, he has consistently challenged caste oppression and stood firm in defense of the rights and dignity of marginalized communities, both within legislative spaces and through grassroot mobilization. He rose to national prominence by leading the historic Chalo Una Dalit March, mobilizing thousands to confront the brutal flogging of Dalits in Una and to demand justice, dignity, and land rights. Please join us in welcoming Jignesh Mevani.
जय भीम। पायल तड़वी की मदर, दर्शन सोलंकी की माताजी और राधिका अम्मा,
तीनों को वंदन करके, तीनों को प्रणाम करके मैं आपके बीच में 2 शब्द कहना चाहता हूं। और आज जब मैं मेरी आंखों के सामने दर्शन सोलंकी, पायल तड़वी और रोहित की माताओं को देख रहा हूं, तब मुझे नजीब और उमर की मां भी याद आ रही है। मैं सोच रहा था कि अप्पा राव, बंगारू दत्तात्रेय और स्मृति ईरानी को सब काम छोड़कर अंबेडकर स्टूडेंट एसोसिएशन और रोहित वेमुला को लगातार एक के बाद एक चिट्ठी लिखकर, इतने ईमेल्स ठोककर लगातार टारगेट करने का वक्त कैसे मिला? एक यूनिवर्सिटी का वाइस चांसलर है, एक एचआरडी मिनिस्टर है, एक लेबर मिनिस्टर है, तीनों को सारा काम छोड़कर उस रोहित वेमुला को गिरा दो। ये घृणा, ये नफरत कहां से पैदा हुई है, ये मैं सोच रहा था। तब अचानक एक बात जहन में आई कि पूरे देश में बहुत से नायकों के, बहुत से आइकॉन्स के, बहुत से महापुरुषों के ढेरों स्टैच्यूज हैं, अनगिनत हजारों की, लाखों की तादाद में हमारे देश में जहां पर भी जाओ, गांव गांव में बहुत से आइकॉन्स के स्टैच्यूज हैं। इन सबको छोड़कर लगातार किसी स्टैच्यू को टारगेट किया जाता है, जूतों की माला पहनाई जाती है, उसकी उंगली तोड़ दी जाती है, उस स्टैच्यू के चश्मे फोड़ दिए जाते हैं, उस पर गोबर डाला जाता है। वो केवल अंबेडकर का स्टैच्यू है। ये क्यों है? ए इधर आ, उस चूड़े चमार को बुला यहां पे। गांव की चौपाल में बैठकर 2000 साल से, 2500 साल से दलितों के साथ, बहुजनों के साथ ये जो बदतमीजी होती थी, उस बदतमीजी को चांटा मारा है डॉक्टर भीमराव अंबेडकर ने। इसलिए उस स्टैच्यू को डिसमेंटल करने की कोशिश करते हैं। जिसको जाति के नाम पर गाली देकर गांव की चौपाल में बैठकर जलील करते आए हैं, उसका बेटा अचानक एक दिन एसडीएम बनकर लाल लाइट वाली गाड़ी लेकर पुलिस स्टाफ के साथ जब गांव के बीच में आता है, तो तथाकथित ऊंची जातियों के मुझ पर ताव देने वाले लोगों का ईगो हर्ट हो जाता है। और उस बात का गुस्सा कि आप जो मेहनत होते थे, जो नाली में उतरते थे, जो नाली में उतरते हैं, किसी का घूस साफ करते हैं, खेत में है, फैक्ट्रियों में है, उसका बेटा 1.5 लाख का पगार ले रहा है बीएसएनएल में, रेलवे में, ओएनजीसी में, आईओसी में। वो पटवारी बन गया, वो टीचर बन गया, वो आईएएस बन गया, आईपीएस बन गया, वो एमपी, एमएलए, विधायक, सांसद और मंत्री बन गया। इन तमाम बातों का गुस्सा वो डॉक्टर अंबेडकर के स्टैच्यू पर जाकर निकालते हैं। यही गुस्सा उनको रोहित वेमुला से था। ही वॉज एन ऑब्स्टेकल। अंबेडकर स्टूडेंट एसोसिएशन